University of Science and Technology here in Missis in Moscow, and the final UK-Russia University Alliance Forum of the season. My name is Alan Moore and I'm Director of the International Office here at Missis and host of Capital Sports on Moscow's Capital FM. Good morning to those of you watching in the UK, good afternoon to those of you from here to the Urals, and of course good evening to our friends in Siberia and the Far East of Russia. This series, which began here in Missis on December 17th last year, opened with the theme of gender parity, and we finish up with an even deeper dive into that same topic. The series is brought to you by the National University of Science and Technology Missis and the Cultural and Educational Department of the British Embassy in Moscow and the British Council. Last year, we tackled the broad topic of gender equality in the academic environment and found that while there is progress being made, there are barriers to women within the academic world that still need to be broken down. Additionally, we saw that where advances can be made, that they do need a certain amount of mentoring and understanding to create that dynamic to even the playing field, so to speak. We then had a forum on academic mobility with ITMO and heard of the real imbalance of students coming to Russia for even short-term programs or courses. There was plenty of food for thought on how we can, repair that situation and to rebalance the whole academic mobility situation. And of course, we had to do that while we are preparing for the post-COVID world. As many students and scientists visiting Russia, we need to encourage as many as leave to come in. We had a forum then on financing joint educational activities and one on climate change challenges. Both forums were well attended and addressed topics that impact us all short, medium and long term. We were back here last month for a cracking forum on transnational education and dual degrees, with a very lively panel discussion that certainly had me on my toes. The thorny topic, as I mentioned, of dual degrees and recognition of qualifications was certainly a lot of food for thought. 2 weeks ago, Sechenov University hosted a forum on bilateral cooperation in the field of medicine, which in this current climate is very, very important. And of course, it's an actual theme. And now we're back here in Missis and again on the topic of gender. Our theme today is gender equality and social inclusion in STEM fields and industry. And we have a terrific lineup of speakers for you to enjoy. We'll travel virtually from Russia to the UK and back before a final panel discussion here in the Tochka Innovatsiya, or Point of Innovation here in Moscow. Remember, you can send in your questions to us and I'll endeavour to ask them to our speakers today. So I'll move on swiftly, as you'll already be tired of my face and voice, and welcome to open our forum with her presentation titled From Object to Subject, Women in Science Popularization and Science Journalism, Dr. Alexandra Borisova-Saleh. You're on, Dr.
Hello. Thank you for, can you hear me well?
Loud and clear, Alexandra, you're coming through perfectly.
Good, very well. I first want to thank Missis University for organizing this event and the previous ones. I was very happy to discover that there is this topic on the top of the agenda that really, I think it's very, very relevant for Russia and all over the world, and I'm very happy that we can discuss it. And thank you very much for inviting me, for having me here today. I will give an introduction. It will not be very scientific. I will just give you some examples of how we moved from being an object to being a subject in science popularization and science communication. So first, I'm actually, let me share my screen. Do you see my correct screen or my wrong screen?
Right now
Click my wrong screen. You see,
yeah,
you see
if
the.
you just click play, it should be going through perfectly for us.
Goodness, sorry. Let's try again.
There we go, perfect.
Okay, good. So what I would like to start with is something very, very far in the past. Well, not very far, but 400 years ago, 300 years ago. How old is actually science popularization? Well, you can start to count it from ancient Greece, but not really, because at that time we didn't have really science in modern sense. So it was more lifestyle, right? So you were doing science, popularizing science at the same time. And we mostly think of science communication as of something that happens in between science and society that should be separated. So how could we understand that we started to communicate science rather than leave science and do it? So strangely, it all started with ladies. So in 1686, Bernard de Fontenelle, the French astronomer, he wrote this popular science book, Conversation of the Plurality of the Worlds. So how do we understand that it's a popular science book, not what Galileo Galilei did basically he did his outreach to reach his scientific goals rather than popularization? Well, because de Fontenelle, he decided to talk to a lady. The whole thing of popular science book is done as a dialogue with this invented marquise. She's a fake protagonist of the book. And some philosopher, astronomer, he walks with her in some garden, so they watch stars. And he speaks, so these are conversations are with this marquise. He speaks with her about the plurality of the world, so the contemporary concepts in astronomy. So when you talk science to men, it's science. When you talk science to women, it's science popularization. Why? Well, because they were explaining that a lady, it is a creature kind of, it's curious, but it's not really a properly acting subject, right? It is something that it can only receive the information, more or less. So this sounds a little bit like Enlightenment initiatives when we think that our audience should be silly if we enlighten it, right? So at that time, it was female audience that it is ideal that you can imagine to do something simpler, to do something kind of so a lady is kind of a baby but already adult. And less than 100 years later, Italian, Francesco Algarotti, he wrote this Newtonianismo per le dame, Newtonianism for the ladies, with the same idea. So we want to popularize, to explain the theory of Newton in clearer terms. So who would we choose as our audience? A lady. This, we are already in the 18th century, so very, very slowly, but things start to change. Despite ladies are not welcome in the formal education, they cannot teach, but more and more of them enter also the world of formal science, maybe not officially, maybe in the lower positions. So probably the most famous example of the kind in Russia is Sofia Kovalevskaya, who basically entered in in the fake marriage to be able to travel to Europe and study mathematics there. And it's a very interesting story. If you don't know it, just go and look. It's also romantic because so it was for the gender equality that this friend, comrade of her, married her, but then he fell in love with his kind of fake wife. At the beginning, she was not very enthusiastic because her goal in this marriage was to be able, as a married lady, to travel to Europe and study. And she succeeded very well. And she was one of the first professors in math. Then kind of pendulum, it moved another way again. When the science popularization started to be something more formal as we know it now, and Soviet science in the beginning of 20th century, it was a little bit the period of neoconservatism. So the main heroes of science were once again male heroes. So here you see this Alexey Payevsky, his photo of 9 days of 1 year, the iconic Soviet film by Michael Romm. And it's also iconic as something that you study to learn about science communication in Soviet Union, because it's a very stereotypic thing when you have the main character who is a physicist and experimentalist. Then you have kind of his rival, but not really, who is also lovely, but definitely the secondary figure who is a physicist but theoretician. And there is this very lovely lady who chooses the experimentalist, not the theoretician. She's also a physicist. She does research work. So she basically, her responsibilities are nearly in science are nearly the same as of her husband and her non-husband. But at the same time, her responsibility is also to take care of this genius. And then she makes a lot of mental trips on, am I a good wife? Oh, I'm not sure. Am I a good physicist? Oh, I'm not sure. So it's a very, very dependent figure. And you ask yourself why? For no reason. So she has to be a physicist, but at the same time, she is still, remember what we started, she's still not really a subject. She's still not really a protagonist. And this also expresses itself in the figures of important science communicators or celebrity scientists also across the ocean, because the most important figure in science communication at that time in the US is undoubtedly Carl Sagan. In the USSR, it would be more or less analogous to Sergei Kapitsa. And this is a very, very strongly male figure. It's a very strongly also attractive. This, again, paternalistic figure that really lectures, and it's kind of alternative to its scientific reality, because maybe you've heard the expression Sagan effect. That means that Carl Sagan, he had issues in his scientific career because of his outreach activities, because normal scientists, they would think that he's not very serious if he goes to TV. Sergei Kapitsa, he had the very, very same issue. So he was not elected to neither to Soviet Academy of Sciences or Russian Academy of Sciences, despite his brother was, his father was Nobel Prize winner. Why? Well, because you're not serious. You're not serious enough in your science if you have time to go to TV. And there is an independent science metric research that says that both Sagan and Kapitsa, they were indeed serious if you compare them to their peers who were elected to Russian and American Academy of Sciences in the same time. They were good enough. They were better than those who were elected. This I would argue, kind of makes them a little bit similar to a lady. Why? It's because there is something away from your scientific work that makes you looking less serious in science. So you kind of somehow don't meet the main, the core of the image of scientist. Well, since then, things change again, and there would be another topic, another talks that would speak about the number of men and women in science and so on. I would say that we definitely on the right way right now. And I will just name, going back to science popularization itself, we'll speak about science journalism and science communication, Russia and abroad. So basically science journalism is nearly everywhere, both in Russia and in Europe. It's quite an equal rights profession. You would have 50-50, 40-60 with different variations, who is 40, who is 60% men and women representation in this profession. And in Russia, I would argue that it is indeed quite a female issue, science popularization, because we have a number of major initiatives that were actually started and moved on by females. So one of the first, if I'm not mistaken, the first radio program about science was Granite of Science and Echo of Moscow is by Marina Spatsaturian. Nowadays, I would say the only program completely dedicated to science on a big federal TV is Gambrutsky Shot on Russian public TV, OTR, by Olga Orlova. Yours faithfully served as the first president of Russian Association of Science Communication. And we also have a predominantly female board. We actually have more issues of looking for men to join our board rather than having more ladies. Major science journalism awards, both in Europe and in Russia, often go to female authors. Our own award, Russian Science Writer of the Year, it's only 3 years old, and the first 2 years we had female winners. First was Evgenia Sherbina, and the second one was Maria Bazi, who then, it was last year, won European Science Journalist of the Year for the first time in the history of award. That's a Russian journalist won that prize, and it's a female Russian journalist. Now we are calculating the votes of the Russian Science Journalist of the Year 2021. I cannot tell you yet the name, but because I'm in the organizing committee, I can make a small spoiler. It's a lady again. I'm not doing anything for that. It happens so. It's a very independent expert committee, chooses female writers based by their competences, not by their portraits, yeah, because people submit texts, they don't submit photos or I don't know what. Why I think this is going on this way? Well, because nowadays, journalism in general in Russia, if you look at last 10 years of history, it's quite a female profession, journalism and PR. You have a lot of editors, female editors-in-chief, some really iconic ones like Svetlana Granyuk or Galina Timchenko. So basically it means that the doors are open. When the doors are open, you have people who enter, people of all kinds, and more or less it turns out that both ladies and men can work in the same way if they're allowed. If a lady is a subject, is something independent, not this lovely thing that we only can walk with in the garden. And to finish with, what is actually science communication we're talking about? Here you see the definition, but I want you not just to read the definition, but to see this lovely lady, Maya Horst of the University of Copenhagen, who is one of the major researchers in science communication in the world, and who is so important that she gave this definition that is used all around the world to denote the field of science communication. So what's more than this, to state the authority and to manifest the contribution of females into the field of science communication. Thank you for your attention.
Alexandra, thank you very, very much. You can hear me okay? Alexandra, you can hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, great. Okay. Thank you very, very much for the presentation. It's fascinating from start to finish. As an archaeologist and a historian, it was a kind of it was a lovely kind of nice way to start with like a historical fairy tale and then move forward to present day. A couple of questions in. I've got one of my own and one asked in from Maral Danusaryan from the Higher School of Economics here, a student. And the question is, what methods are used in media to, let's just say, regulate or even to monitor gender parity?
Well, you would calculate simply. I mean, can you repeat the question?
Sure. What methods are used in media, for example, in Russia, to calculate or to monitor gender parity?
Okay. Well, you survey people, so you do survey of science journalists of journalists. Then you can do the research of open sources, so basically to see how many ladies are in these or not, like in newsrooms, and on which positions. And internationally, people from like Association of Public Communication of Science and Technology, they have dedicated surveys, again, not just to calculate how many are we, but to ask, do you see any bias? How was your career? So it's basically things are done, but I would say now it's really the level of monitoring. That's a good that's a good phrase. It's not. I'm not really aware of some enforcement initiatives, and not because we don't want, but because we don't need. This is a lovely thing.
Again, that's always good to hear. Alexandra, just from me, finally, before I let you escape and enjoy the rest of your Friday, the situation in Russia in terms of with media, we know that, as you already brought up very, very well in your presentation, it is developing. Do you think that, for example, if there were more female editors-in-chief or more female kind of department heads within media organizations, would that make it easier for let's just say younger women to break through, or do you think it'll just be a maintenance of the status quo, especially in science journalism?
The point is that I cannot really say that we need more. Yeah, basically, let me make an example. So I started my career in Gazeta.ru. That it's quite big, general interest, digital mass media. So I started, there was a male editor-in-chief and another male editor-in-chief, and then two female editors-in-chief in row. So I think that the situation is kind of, it's quite balanced. But even when there were male editors-in-chief, there would be vice editor-in-chief who is a female. There would be heads of department who are a female. So for me, when I came to journalism, I really had a very, very strong feeling of, I mean, I was not thinking of, am I welcome? Is there any limit? Do I lack strong female figures to follow? No, it was really an editorial newsroom where where we don't speak in these terms. Then the main rival of Gazeta.ru in that times was Lenta.ru, that was forever headed by Galina Timchenko, and it was never like, yeah, they have a female editor-in-chief. No, they have an editor-in-chief. And at some point, I remember when Gazeta.ru had male editor-in-chief, Mikhail Mikhalin, then they always have gatherings of editors-in-chief and somewhere, and briefings and so on. And sometimes he was coming back and he was telling, oh my goodness, I'm a minority. So indeed, because RIA Novosti, there was Svetlana Miranyuk. In Forbes, there was, my goodness, Елизавета Осетинская. In Ведомости, there was Tatiana Lysova. So they're like super iconic brands in mass media, like better than Kommersant. They had a male one, always TASS also, but it's really mixed. And if you can say, if you can ask who is a minority, then men would be minority, definitely not ladies. Oh. If we want to speak in this way. So I really think that, well, in mass media, I was very, very lucky in this period to be there. And I think that's why it's going on. See, we have younger generations, younger journalists, and especially science journalists, that they compete and that we would not even talk in these terms. So we talk in these terms when we are asked, but in the everyday life, no.
Okay, so basically it's a case that we men are in the minority, so you ladies have to give us a bit of a break.
Maybe.
I'm joking, of course.
No, but people ask you these questions. Yeah. They say, why your winners are always ladies? And I'm like, I'm not even voting. I'm organizing. I'm speaking about Russian Science Journalist of the Year. I'm organizing. We have an expert committee that is quite balanced, but I think a little bit more men than ladies. And then I was like, go ask experts. Okay. I don't really think that they judge by gender, but people do ask me. You have like 2, I would have 3 winners in a row that are ladies. Like, make enforcement. And I was like, okay. I'll try.
Okay, I don't feel so oppressed now as I did when you began, so that's okay. Dr. Alexandra Borisova-Sale, thank you very, very much for your time today. Have a great Friday and a great weekend.
Thank you, you too.
Okay.
I will be very happy to follow the conference further.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, and we're staying in Russia now to move on to our next presenter. And his topic is Gender in Science through the prism of the Nobel Prizes. We're delighted to welcome on as our second speaker of the day, Alexey Payevsky. Alexey, you're very welcome to the forum.
Hi, everyone. But organizers didn't say me that my talk is in English.
Oh, listen, Alexey, if you want to do it in Russian, do it in Russian. We'll translate it. So whichever.
Okay, because my talk was not presentation; it's some thinking, and I can talk in English, but I can't yet think in English.
Well, listen, I'll tell you what, I can't think in English either, but I'm Irish, so that's normal. You go ahead in Russian, we're ready for it because the topic is absolutely terrific. So, ready when you
are. Thank you for understanding. И поэтому я постараюсь тогда...
That is why I'll certainly try to
медленнее.
To speak slower.
И попрошу в следующий раз просто...
I would ask you next time, please give me a notice so that I get prepared in English.
Это большой сюрприз.
It's a big surprise. Welcome to you from Perm. I'm now on my business trip.
Так случилось, что...
It so occurred that over the last several years, I've been studying the Nobel Prize winners, their biography, and I try to narrate it in Russian. As a result, over 300 biographies of Nobel Prize winners we have on record in physics. From 1901 to 1975, 1975. That's why I'll reflect on all of it, specifically how the gender composition changed over time over the last years. I mean, the Nobel Prize winners, since the time when Nobel Prize was established in 1901 or 1911. Somewhere there. As a matter of fact, I visit frequently various conferences, Nobel Prize winners, and Nobel Prize committee, and the Nobel Prize week, and I've heard over the last years that the Nobel Prize committee is giving few awards to women. Now I know what to say to the Nobel Prize Committee. Alexander Borisova's answer, that is, why always women win in this country in journalism? This question is being addressed not to me, but rather to the experts. But in my brief reflections, I would say that as a matter of fact, the Nobel Prize Committee has been welcoming women from the very start of its existence. I have a simple example. The Nobel Prize of 1903 in physics, or 2003 in physics, the first women's natural science was awarded to Maria Skłodowska-Curie, 1903, together with her husband Pierre Curie and Henri Becquerel. Let's take a look. 1903, as I mentioned. Unfortunately, we have been unable to trace back the position of candidates or nominees for Nobel Prize winner over the past years. All the nominees for the 50 years elapsed. And to the honor of the Nobel Prize Committee, never ever there has been a leak on the nominees or upcoming winners has ever occurred. Let's take this book, the Nobelists, the biographies for the first decade of Nobel Prize Committee existence. Look, in 2003, we had 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We had 15 nominees in total. Maria Curie, that is 1903. 1903. Some was nominated, had been nominated 7 times, like Wanda Renius, who was awarded the prize in chemistry on that year. There was another person in physics, he was awarded 7 times. Guglielmo Marconi was awarded 6 times. Maria Skłodowska-Curie was awarded only once. Only one nomination. Nonetheless, she was awarded that prize. There was the same story in 1911 in chemistry. We have a bit more nominations there, about 20. Maria Skłodowskaya-Curie. She was awarded without her husband on her own. Actually, he died tragically soon after the first prize was awarded to him, together with his wife. And then Maria Curie was nominated only twice due to too many nominations in total that were there. So as for the nominations for Nobel Prizes, although women during the first decades of Nobel Prize award, if I'm not confused, over the first 40 or 50 years of Nobel Prize existence, there were only 3 of those in science which were awarded to the Curie family. 3 were awarded to Marie Curie, then to Irene Curie in chemistry. Why did it occur like that? The point is, claim should be laid not to the Nobel Prize Committee, but to the scholars. Right now, prior to this presentation, I opened once again the database on the nominees, and I ran through the first decade. There were 1,120 nominations in physiology or medicine. No woman was there. None. This was due to the arrangements, to the mechanism of the Nobel Prize Committee. The Nobel Prize Committee may not award a prize without nomination. And males, unfortunately, nominate males in most cases. As for the first years of the Nobel Prize existence, the best way to secure the prize was to have as a colleague or as a tutor, as a professor, a Nobel Prize winner himself, because only the latter can nominate you for a Nobel Prize.
And now the situation is gradually changing. We do remember that over the last several years, the number of ladies nominated laureates, winners, both in physics and chemistry, has grown principally. We now have sixth laureate lady in chemistry, and I think about third laureate prize winner in physics. And we have to. Very few ladies physicists received the Nobel Prize in for physics. You remember a case when in the year 2018, the Nobel Prize for physics went to a lady, a scientist, that was, if I'm not mistaken, of course, Donna Strickland, for super short laser pulses. At the moment of receiving the Nobel Prize, Wikipedia did not have a page dedicated to that lady. It appeared in a few moments later. That was a very typical, say, situation. And I think that presently, since we cannot have a look at the list of nominations, the Nobel Prize Committee is doing a lot. Nobel Prize Committee is doing a lot to set the relations to attitude to women in science in a correct way. But I would like to say that given all this, given the fact that the number of lady Nobel Prize winners is growing, that means I want that the number of women scientists would be growing in science per se, but the moment the Nobel Committee has receives a quota for ladies, that will be winners. That will be the end of the Nobel Prize. For women or for men, whatever, no matter. Or be it for race or minority, I would like definitely that all scientific prizes were given away only on the basis, and exclusively on the basis of merits, and not on any other consideration. So this is a story which we have. For my part, with my colleague Anna Harukhina, we're doing our best to tell more and more to our audience, to our readers, about biographies of lady scientists. We write biographies of scientists, Nobel Prize winners, and nominated. And so this midway in popularizing women scientists, but not as a quota, not by way of quota women in science, is the correct approach. And that is the end of my story. This is the bottom of my bag. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anglickam. Alexey, is it better to have the questions in Russian or in English?
Не очень слышно вопросы, если он есть.
Лучше вопросов на русском или на английском?
На английском можно.
Okay, super. Very, very simple question on with the Nobel Prize for in the sciences. Do you think that there was an active discrimination in the past? Do you think that women were just discounted because of their gender and weren't allowed to be recognized for their work?
I think in a level of Nobel Prize committee, there is no discrimination. There was no discrimination. It's my information, it's my thinking and my data. But I have no protocols of the discussion of members for the Nobel Prize committee.
Which is all well and good that we understand that there was no discrimination at level. Do you think that that there was discrimination at the let's say the ground level, that women weren't allowed to publish or to be published? Do you think that it was just the general societal problem?
Yes, I think this problem is problem of the general science society. It's we have a lot of examples. Then women was lower. We have lower visible in science, in especially in physics, and less, especially in chemistry. And I think that more a good situation was in physiology, in physiology, but not in medicine. In medicine, it's very bad situation.
Okay, explain, why was it a bad situation from your knowledge?
Because the doctors is very close.
Better opportunities for women here, within Russia than compared to outside.
When you tell about Russian society, you tell about Soviet society or modern Russian society?
Sorry, yes, Soviet society, you're correct. Yes, Soviet society.
I think Soviet society was Soviet. I think, but I not studied this question. Not hard study these questions. I think Soviet science society was made more gender friendly in near 1960s, 1970s.
Oh, so there was a kind of
we have very popular Soviet film about the women scientists in 1955. It's a film, movie. Movie.
Yes, yeah, correct. Yeah.
Spring, Vesna, about with Lyubov Orlova, about women scientists physics.
So, okay, so we need then, for example, Jennifer Lopez or someone to do, to star as a physicist to popularize science, or maybe to get some balance back in gender in America and Europe?
I think so.
Okay, listen, final question before you go away, and I'll let you enjoy the rest of your Friday. We had a question come in from Mongolia. It's from a teacher from Technological Institute. Exactly. So this is further afield. From Erin Dusul. I'm going to mess up this name. Jaral Sayan. So my apologies if I mess this up. So, what percentage do you see as gender parity in awarding Nobel Prizes? Is it 50-50? Is it 60-40? Where is gender parity?
It depends of the branch of the Nobel Prize. We have in physics. We have one Nobel Prize winner in first 50 years, one in second 50 years, and one in 2018. In chemistry, we have two winners in first 50 years, one winners in second 50 years, and two winners in the last 20 years. And in the physiology situation is very good. First physiologist in Nobel Prize winner woman physiologist was in the second 50 years, and we have more than 10 Nobel Prize winners female in last 50 years.
Well, so we just need to get the physicists.
It's a percentage. We have in all science nomination, we have 600 Nobel Prize winners.
Yeah.
And in 600 Nobel Prize winners, we have near 15, maybe 20 Nobel Prize winners female.
Well, okay. So we're a few steps away from having gender parity, but we're getting there eventually. Maybe in another 200 years it will be gender parity. Alexey Payevsky, thank you so much for your time today, for presenting in Russian and answering questions in English. Have a brilliant Friday and have a great weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we're going to go to Yorkshire and to listen to a presentation on a sense of belonging, how staff networks and learned societies can promote inclusion. I'm delighted to welcome onto the forum today Dr. Fiona Gill. Fiona, you're very, very welcome. Good morning to you, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
Good morning, and thank you for inviting me to take part in this forum. I'm just going to try and share my screen now. Just give it a minute to come up.
We're waiting for you, no worries. There we go.
Can you see it? I can't see anything. I can just see a black screen there. Oh, hang on. Sorry, let me just try that again.
No worries. It's a Friday, so it's taking its time to get warmed up, you know. There we go, perfect. If you just press play, we'll be ready to roll.
Yep, okay. There we go. Okay, so my name's Fiona Gill. I'm an associate professor in paleontology and geochemistry at the University of Leeds. And I'm also a co-chair of the Women at Leeds. Oh, sorry. And I'm also currently a vice president of the Paleontological Association. And so that informs my title today. I'm talking about the role of staff networks and learned societies in promoting inclusion and a sense of belonging for women in STEM. So the questions that I'll address today are: what are the global trends, existing challenges, and persistent obstacles in promoting gender equality through social dialogue? Does discussing gender equality issues make a difference in the world? And what measures should be taken to back gender equality in STEM fields and industry? So by way of introduction to the first question, I want to compare two UK paleontologists born 180 years apart. So on the right, that's me a couple of years ago at a fossil festival. And on the left is Mary Anning, who was born in 1799 into a socio-economically underprivileged family in a small town on the south coast of England. Mary used to hunt for fossils on the beach with her father. And after her father died, when Mary was 11, she sold her fossil finds to help support the family. And Mary had little formal education, but she taught herself geology. And she eventually became famous for her fossil finds, which included ammonites and spectacular marine and flying reptiles. But Mary was rarely credited for her discoveries in the publications that reported them. And she was not allowed to attend the scientific meetings at which they were discussed because she was a woman. And so 200 years later, from a comparable socio-economic background, I was able to obtain a bachelor's degree in geology, a PhD in paleontology, and have my research published and take part in scientific meetings to discuss my research. So clearly, major progress has been made in terms of women's participation in STEM, but we still haven't achieved gender equity in STEM. And I think one major barrier to gender equality in STEM is the current belief that no bias or discrimination exists, or rather that no bias and discrimination exist anymore, by people who've not experienced or observed it directly. And so in the past, overt discrimination was more common than it is now. So things like women being told that certain jobs or areas of study were not for them, or overt sexual harassment, such as inappropriate physical contact. And that kind of blatant discrimination, which is thankfully much less common in this current generation, is easier to see. You can see it and hopefully you can call it out, but really it's just a tip of the iceberg. And a study by the US National Academies in 2018 used this iceberg metaphor to try and get across the idea that this very obvious overt discrimination that I think we would all condemn is only a very small proportion of what contributes to a hostile environment, or at least an unwelcoming environment for women in STEM. And this includes more subtle forms of inequity, things like personal comments about your appearance or lifestyle choices, teasing or so-called banter, and also benevolent sexism. And because these are not so obvious, it's difficult to identify them and also to fight against them when they do happen. And then at a less obvious level still, there's unconscious bias, implicit associations. And these are beliefs and associations that we all hold that are below our conscious level of recognition, but they can lead us to make decisions if we don't try and become more aware of them and mitigate their impact. They can lead us to make decisions that are biased. And I just want to mention one study that showed this very clearly. When CVs were distributed to principal investigators to evaluate an applicant's suitability for the role of lab manager, identical CVs with either a female name or a male name at the top were rated very differently. So the CV that had the male name attached, that applicant was rated as more competent than the one that had the female name attached. and the principal investigators were willing to pay a higher starting salary and offer more mentorship and guidance to the applicant who had a male name on the otherwise identical CV. And so the result of these types of inequity and bias and the subsequent lack of representation that results from them leads to women and other underrepresented groups feeling like they don't belong in STEM. And so this can take the form of feeling an expectation to fit in with the prevailing culture and not be their authentic self, whether that's their physical appearance or the way they speak or their leadership style. Being in a minority group can lead to stereotype threats. And if you are successful in establishing a career in STEM as a member of an underrepresented group, then you're very likely to suffer from imposter syndrome, which is a feeling that you don't belong, you're not really supposed to be there, you just got there by some sort of lucky chance or a fluke, and maybe somebody's going to come along and tell you that you don't deserve to be there and take it all away from you. And the result of all of these issues is that the impact of them and the impact of the actions that members of underrepresented groups take to mitigate them is to divert time, effort, and energy away from research, and this contributes to women leaving STEM. But conversely, it's been shown that increasing a sense of belonging results in improved retention of underrepresented groups in STEM. So the question for me is, how can we change STEM culture to increase a sense of belonging for women and other underrepresented groups? And one of the ways that I think we can do this is by discussing gender equality issues. But who's involved in those discussions, what gets discussed, and how it's discussed makes a difference. And so there are various different types of discussions that can take place. And there's certainly place for discussion amongst women themselves or other members of underrepresented groups, because by sharing experiences, this can promote a sense of solidarity and a feeling that you're not alone in the difficulties that you're facing. But in general, I think the majority of the conversations about gender equality should involve all members of the community, because it's everybody's responsibility. And these discussions are useful for raising awareness and sharing data. And it's very important, in my opinion, to root these discussions in the data that show that this inequality and bias exists. And in this way, we can recognise the structural barriers that women and other groups face, rather than put their lack of success or persistence in STEM careers down to personal failings. And these broader discussions can also help to challenge assumptions and stereotypes about women in science and career choices that they would like to make. But the most important thing about these discussions, in my opinion, is that they should be a catalyst for action. I just want to mention as well, especially since we were talking about films with the previous speaker, some of these, apart from actual interactive discussions, there are other ways to promote these ideas, such as films. And the example that I've got here, Picture a Scientist, is a great example of a film that combines a lot of data about the issues with the personal stories of 3 women from 3 different generations and the inequalities that they've experienced, as well as the success that they've had in addressing these issues. So the final part of my presentation is about what measures should be taken to back gender equality in STEM fields and industry. Excuse me. So I'm going to focus mainly on the roles of staff networks and learning societies, but I just wanted to take this opportunity to mention other actions that I strongly believe should be taken at a range of different levels. So at the national level, I think we need fairer laws and policies around things like parental leave in order to support discipline-specific initiatives like those for women in STEM. I think we need public reporting of relevant data, so things like the gender pay gap. And it's important to embed equality into institutional policies and processes and not consider it as something that it's nice to have, but it's not essential. Organisations should make mandatory training such as mitigations against unconscious bias, and also things like active bystander training to help women and allies for women. Organisations should invest in mentoring because this has been demonstrated to increase a sense of belonging and retention of underrepresented groups in STEM. And as individuals, we can take some responsibility for challenging inequality wherever we see it, whether it's inviting guest speakers for teaching or selecting speakers for conferences. And also, we should take personal responsibility for making sure that we're not inadvertently excluding individuals from projects or publications, or even just from conversations about science. And what's key here is that men need to share responsibility for gender equality. So men, please be our allies. So moving on now to talk about the role for staff networks. Staff networks can be really important for people to make connections, to give and receive peer support, for people from underrepresented groups to share their experiences and share information and strategies that have helped them. And in universities, staff networks also play an important role as a conduit between the people on the ground, the network members who are doing the work, and university leadership. So overall, they can strongly play a role in promoting a sense of belonging. And the Women at Leeds network is a network for all staff and postgraduate researchers at the university, but we have subgroups and events for specific groups, such as postgraduate researchers, women in STEM, technical staff. And we have a programme of regular events, including guest speakers and panel discussions. And popular recent topics have included imposter syndrome, that one's always oversubscribed, emotional labour at work, mentoring, and preparing for promotion. And at the start of the COVID pandemic, when the UK went into lockdown in March 2020, all of our network activities moved online. And this was a big change for how we operated the network. But actually, it's really given an opportunity to particularly increase opportunities for peer support between network members in between the formal events. And similarly, learner societies have got a very important role to play in creating a sense of belonging for underrepresented groups, because to a certain extent they control and they shape the perception of the particular discipline or area that they represent by hosting meetings, running journals, and awarding grants and prizes. And
Fiona,
so
we'll have to start to wrap up now, just so you know.
Yep, I've got one more slide. So learner societies got a very important role to play because they confer validation and legitimacy on their participants, and in the same way create that sense of belonging. And I've got a list of some of the specific actions that the Paleontological Association, which I'm involved in, has taken in order to promote these. And the one I just want to pick up on is that for eligibility for all of our prizes and awards, we've taken the decision to discount the year 2020 because of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. And in fact, that's my last slide. Despite all of the progress that we've made and all of the initiatives that are currently ongoing, I think this is a really important issue that we need to address because the impact of COVID-19 on women's careers in STEM, we can already see the negative impact it's had, and this will become more and more evident in the coming years. And this is something that we need to directly address in order to achieve gender equality in STEM.
Fiona, thank you very, very much. Fascinating, and so much to digest in that. And I have one question for you. You mentioned about, I want to ask you a question. How can men be an ally? I'm a man, at least I was when I woke up this morning. So how can I be an ally to female researchers, female scientists, female teachers. Apart from just calling out, kind of if I see like inappropriate behavior or like kind of very obvious issues, how can I be an ally? Give me 3 quick steps.
Well, I think the most important one is to call out inappropriate behaviour, but not just the really obviously inappropriate behaviour, the more subtle things as well. And also, as an ally, be very wary of benevolent sexism. I mentioned that and in the talk, but I didn't expand on it. But one example that happened to me might illustrate this. I was discussing with a colleague what I'd be doing when I came back from maternity leave in terms of specific parts of my job. And he said, well, of course, when you're straight back from maternity leave, you won't want to do this particular aspect of my job. So we'll ask someone else to do it. And really, there was no reason why I couldn't do that. It wasn't a sort of a physical issue or anything. And he was coming from a good place. He wanted to make things easy for me on a return to work from maternity leave because he recognised that could be a tricky transition. But actually, if I hadn't spoken up and argued with him about that, I'd have missed the opportunity to do something which is now an important part of my role. So even sexism that comes from a good place is still sexism. And I think that is an easy trap for people to fall into, especially people who are genuinely trying to make an effort to support women in STEM.
Dr. Fiona Gill from the University of Leeds, thank you so much for a brilliant presentation and answering the question giving a great case as well because I think it strikes home to all of us. Have a great Friday and a great weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Okay,
and now we're moving back to Russia here and I think to Moscow. And the topic of the next presentation is networking among women scientists in solar and space weather physics, a personal perspective. A very warm welcome to our forum today to Dr. Tatiana Podlachikova. I hope I said that right, Dr. Tatiana?
Yes, very right. Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you very much for inviting me to speak at this interesting and important event. I was asked to tell briefly about our research and in particular international collaboration and also in particular with the United Kingdom. So my name is Tatiana and I'm assistant professor at Skolkovo Institute of Science and Technology. This is a private graduate research institute in Moscow that was established in 2011 in collaboration with MIT, and official language of our university for students and faculty members is English. And my area of expertise lies in the solar physics and space weather. So what is space weather? These are solar flares, big plasma clouds ejected from the sun, the most energetic events in our solar systems, and geomagnetic storms and very beautiful, wonderful polar auroras. It's very important to study space weather because now our society strongly relies on technology, and our technology, unfortunately, is very vulnerable to the effects of space weather. Our spacecraft can fall to the ocean, airplanes can disappear from radars, and also power systems, electrostation can be totally disrupted. And I would like to start with this very wonderful photo. This little pale dot, this is our Earth, made by Voyager spacecraft in 1990 from the distance of 6 billion kilometers. And our Earth, this is our planet, this is our home, this is what unites all of us, independent of our gender. And it's impossible to solve current challenges, in particular in space exploration, alone. So really joint effort, big joint effort, and international collaboration, international network is very needed. And also, this international network is very important because it helps a lot to drive joint projects, to send students for academic mobility trips, to write strong publications, and to develop joint scientific ideas based on your expertise, but not on your gender. And also Fiona mentioned, for instance, sharing of data, and for instance, for heliophysics and solar space weather missions, there is a general agreement that all data are open, and all these factors drive science forward. This in its turn drives technology forward, and then new science is born. And in this network, there are, of course, a lot of women, and this is a very strong mutual support. And one of the example of recent groundbreaking mission to the Sun called Solar Orbiter, it was launched in February 2020. This is really collaborative effort of all countries. Of European countries, in United States, Russia, many participants. And for instance, this spacecraft was actually built in United Kingdom by Airbus under support of United Kingdom Space Agency, and also United Kingdom participated in development of a number of instruments on board spacecraft, and currently we all are involved already in processing of this unprecedented new data that we already got from the spacecraft. We also collaborate with a number of international organizations. One of the project is supported by European Commission Horizon program for research and innovation. This project is dedicated to high resolution solar physics, and it includes 35 international partners. The aim is also to develop the science for future high-resolution solar telescope, and a number of United Kingdom partners is involved into these very big projects. And also within this project, one of the schools was organized in United Kingdom, unfortunately online, but the idea was to be present, and one of my PhD student, who is female PhD student, won participation in this school, which is very important to be included into, again, this network, and with one of the best applications. Also, we have a number of works dedicated to study of active events on the Sun, and one of the works that I would like to highlight dedicated to study, you see on this video, very nice bubble of plasma ejected from the Sun, and at the end of 2018 we published a very strong paper that is cited very strongly, and there are two very strong scientists from Mallard Space Science Laboratory, one woman at the stage of full professor, and one researcher, main researcher. So this is a very strong collaboration that again drives the whole humanity forward. When people united collaborate based on their expertise, when you're invited to work on the project based on your expertise but not gender. Also, we had projects dedicated to study of Earth radiation belts. It was also a big European project dedicated to study of let's say radiation in our Earth environment, and the project coordinator was University of Sheffield, and there were of course many other participants. And currently I'm also involved in also very important project to develop mission to so-called Lagrangian point L5. This is, if to say briefly, this would allow us to look to the Sun from different perspective, and it would advance space weather predictions. The project coordinator is also organization from United Kingdom. And of course, this all sounds like very energetic, very strong collaboration, and it is. I was very lucky to work with very brilliant men and women. But of course, I have to mention about some issues. in particular, some issues that I sometimes, especially when I started my scientific career, so that I encountered in person. Of course, today it was already discussed that women have lower salaries. Yes, we all know this, and there is the number of women in STEM is smaller than number of men. So we all know this. But I, for instance, in revision of our publications in applications for grants, very often, not very often, but sometimes got some comments like, oh, this lady is too young and too excited, and therefore she can't be objective. Of course, this is unacceptable in any of scientific discussion. If there is a scientific discussion, you need to use scientific arguments, but not some kind of stereotypes. And currently in Europe and in the United States, there are some suggestions to solve these issues. One, for instance, is to make blind review when reviewer doesn't know who is the author of the paper. But it doesn't help often, because usually you know who is writing the paper, because in community everyone knows everyone. But still, this is a good suggestion. And in applications for big proposals, there is discussion that you need to fill on gender balance, and to some degree it helps. It helps to be protected against stereotypes. And I had, it's very interesting, because for part of the works that were totally rejected in my case, like saying, no, this can't be, this is all wrong. Later, I got a very prestigious international Alexander Chizhevsky medal for contribution to space weather and space climate research, and in 2015. And this Alexander Chizhevsky was a Russian scientist who standed at the foundation of space weather science in Russia. And it's interesting that starting, so this medal is awarded in Belgium during European Space Weather Week, and starting 2013, there were already so again, more women got this award than men. There were 5 women, including me, and 2 men who were recognized with this medal. And I'm working with these women and men, and they all are very, very strong scientists and very respected. And also, I was invited to participate in the very important book that actually was presented yesterday at the forefront of physics. So this is a big honor for me to be included into a very big team of international and very well-known physicists. And it's interesting, so our Alexandra, I think, mentioned today Olga Orlova, and the presentation of the book actually was yesterday, and Olga Orlova, together with Alexey Semikhatov, was hosting the book presentation yesterday. It was very well done. And at the end, I wanted to say that in our field, we like to give names to events, so some events on the sun. And there are Halloween storms, very famous Halloween storms in 2003 in October that caused big problems in communications and other problems. And there is Bastille Day event. And recently, this is just a recent highlight that I want to show also here. We did a very strong work that we submitted to a journal 8 March 2021. That is an International Women's Day. In Russia, this is even day off, so very strong day. And it's interesting that the authors of this paper are 10 women from different countries, basically over the globe, and we gave a title to this event, the 2019 International Women's Day, because we studied some active event on the sun that happened during this day. And so we would like to introduce a new name into the field. And these 10 women are women at a different stage again of their academic career, starting from PhD students to full professors. And somehow it's not only scientific research, but also kind of statement that statement on strengths of women in science. And you know, there is a Greek, there was a Greek, very famous Greek philosopher, Plato, who told that everything in our world starts from an idea. And he also discussed the capacity of our society to generate these ideas. And I think that capacity of our society, and in particular, capacity of women is very strong to generate and implement new ideas. And our society should support this, and there are already steps toward this, but we should do, of course, more to provide this opportunity for women to be part of this scientific society. And whatever storms are raging, I wish you all a good weather in space. Thank you very much for your attention.
Tatiana, that's a terrific way to end off as well. And I'm glad to see, I hope you're here on Earth, not in outer space, because without the, you know, unless you're in a space shuttle or something, I'm a bit worried about you. One very simple question is that the solar event, I mean, it's magnificent. It's something that makes it stand out. But do you think that there, you know, in terms of the within realm, because studying geography, I studied weather, and the one thing I always noticed that there were very, very few, say for example, meteorologists who were women, and then like looking at space as well, there were very, very few women involved. Do you think that it's just an area that maybe should be highlighted more as a very good career prospect for young girls or female students?
I think actually it's changing now. Now we have more and more women in this field and also on leading positions. And what is also important that you know, Einstein told that imagination is more important than the knowledge itself. And imagination is very, very strongly related to intuition. And first you have this intuitive understanding of the processes of our nature, and then you need to find the ways to prove it. And women are very good in intuition, right? So, and now situation is very, if you look, so we discussed Marie Curie today, if you find her photo, she's sitting alone among men. But now if you look to modern conference, you see a lot of girls. But of course, problems that we have, we need to solve.
Okay. Dr. Tatiana Polachikova, thank you so much for your time today. I wish you a great Friday and a wonderful weekend as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we're staying in Russia, but we're moving down to the Black Earth region. So we've gone from outer space to the very, very dark, deep, fertile soil of Stary Oskol. And Professor Zinara Mukhina, her presentation is Can a Woman Be an Effective Leader? I just hope she is online. Yes, she is. Den dobry, Zinara, как у вас дела?
Добрый день, спасибо.
Thank you. I'm doing fine. I welcome all participants of the forum. We're meeting for the second time. And the last time was before the New Year, and we're looking for the similar, equally good presentation, so you're free to go. Dear colleagues, my subject is Can a woman be an effective leader or manager? At the beginning of the 20th century, it was discussed whether a woman is a human being or not. I will cite a good example. In one university was opposed to election of Amalia, who made a great impact in mathematics to the position of assistant professor. It was the lowest step in the university career. Why? Only because she was a woman. In a highly intellectual scientific community. Let me set another example from the life of our country. In 1960s, in the Soviet Union, one of the TV shows where the key personage was an elderly man, the question was asked, is your family big? 5 persons. And then they added, and 2 women. So the subject matter of my presentation is along those same lines. So it is known that the creative activities of women are valued not only by men, but by women themselves. True, there was a great breakthrough over the last 10 or so years, but such prejudices are still alive in Russia. And this prevents addressing a range of issues relating to achieving a real gender equality. So today, about 54% of the population of the world are women. And the success of any reforms, ongoing reforms, will depend heavily on women. So without taking into account involvement of women in various walks of life of the modern society is not possible. So the United Nations in 1999 adopted a convention about liquidations of all forms of discrimination in relation to women. In 2010, an initiative was started relating to the expansion of the rights and opportunities for women. In 2015. A declaration was published by the General Assembly reforming of our world, the agenda in the area of sustained development until the 2030, which provides for achieving by the year 2030 of all-round involvement of women in all walks of life, be it public life or scientific, industrial life. So in Russia, we have adopted a national strategy of action in the interest of women for the period 2017-2022 for full use of women as resource for the benefit of their society. Let us ask ourselves a question: how is it implemented? How is this strategy implemented, in fact? Specific data used by me for this presentation make it possible for me to describe the situation as follows. Well, there is no signal coming to interpreters. That's why we keep silent at the moment, for the time being. Known that in mining enterprises of Russia occupy a leading position in our economy, and they contribute a lot to the budget of country. And the Oskol mining combine, Lebedynsky mining combine, about 1/3 of staff are women. We conducted a survey. I would like to say that the gender split of the staff members of these enterprises have been stable over the last several years. We conducted a poll of about 210 staff members of those enterprises. All the respondents live in the cities of Stara Oskol, and they belong to the following categories. They are workers, staff members, engineers, and managers of a lower and mid-level. It is known that within the Soviet time, the extent of involvement of women in managerial positions used to be wished for, desired for, and the male society continue to entertain the perception of the secondary, role of women and about the undesirability of women interference or intrusion into male's domain. Let us look at results of our study. The questions which we ask in our questionnaires related to perception of women participation through the eyes of women and through the eyes of ladies. So the question was placed, in which way respondents perceived the ability of women being managers. So the first question is, how would you feel that your immediate manager would be a woman? More than half, one-third of men were against those. Still, the large part of male respondent, 42% said that the gender of their manager is of no importance for them. The ladies responded the following way: 42 responded positively, and the other 35% said that the gender of their manager is of no importance meaning for them. Next question in the questionnaire was, what do they say if any key position in the mining complex was headed by a woman? 15% and 38% of women responded in a positive way. So the results obtained thus show us the persistent stereotypes about inability, the so-called inability of women being as top leaders. So the position, women were different. Women were more prepared to see women as a manager, but still the manager at the low managerial level. The poll of students in those school university showed, and we also polled about 200 students of mechanical and metallurgical faculty department. It showed that the position of staff members and students in respect of women potentially taking manager coincide basically. So that means that in the near future we should not expect any change in this general perception. So to support this fact, I will cite another example. In the Institute of Additional Training, I requested one of the lecturers presenters, a professor, distribute to his member of audience these questionnaires and give time for them to respond. There were 28 male participants. So when the lady person from the chair came, gave her the question list. So you women want to govern? You want to rule? And he smiled provocatively. So the question was whether men or women is the best manager of the production level. Only 4% of the polled women believed that women were the best, would make the best managers. Well, 96 believe that men, of course, by far the best managers. Why so? Because men believe that women are weaker from the standpoint of professional competences, which generates a complex of inferiority with women. And this corresponds to the questions of women. Only 24% of the polled women recognize that women were the best managers. So of interest is the response to the following question. when taking decisions, a man or a woman would exercise more balanced approach in a more responsible way, from a humanistic way, not only taking into account the needs of production process, but our human being. 70% of women and 20% of men believe that the style of management style of women is more flexible and humane as compared with women. Why women could not be successful managers? By far, the men responded. Men believe that women are not able at all to address serious industrial issues, while 63% of polled women believe that it is the resistance of the family relatives prevent them from being successful leaders. Only 13% of women, polled women, say that it's their maternal responsibilities that prevent them from coming up to the level of successful managers. So, and women
taking care of children and their household care. Men continue to work, gain new experience, and make their career. Let's make some conclusions. In a male environment, they have even more idea about male superiority. It was expected, but it was a bit surprising, the position of women there. They say that male intellectual superiority was not that high, but men and women Soviet recognize that they should manage industrial production without any discrimination. Now there is a high balance in the share of women working in science, technology, industry compared with men, in particular as top managers. The distribution was reviewed between men, women. In the top management, one of the major iron and steel holding companies in Russia, Metallo Invest. In 2009, the board of directors included 11 members, all males. In 2012-2013, the board had only one woman out of 7. In 2020, out of 10 members of the board, there were only 2 women. This data provides evidence to the change over the last decade in the number of women in top management of Metallo Invest. It was curious to learn about the share of women among top managers in the Russian trade union GMP, where the balance of men and women in top management of the mining or iron ore mining industry, it was in 2018 was only 11%. Currently, it's over 30%. So the number of female top management in the mining association, iron mining association in Russia has doubled. It was the presidium of the trade union of the iron ore mining TU. Women accounted for a bit more than 3%, while at the lower level of the TU, there were about 50% of women, where the trade union leaders had to work with those companies at the level of working teams and managers. If we take the low and the high and lower levels, please be brief. Well, as for industrial decision-making or socio-economic decision-making, there are increasingly more women. But the stratum of women emerged mostly when market appeared in the country. It's well known that iron and steel companies in Russia, there were crisis periods, as I described at the previous forum. Women led at that time. For instance, if you take the Cherpovetsky steel rolling company, Olga Naumova was the leader, while in the Volga tube making, it was Olga Naumova. And the leading university for iron and steel industry and iron ore mining industry is led by Alevtina Chernikova, who is a doctor of technology. Gender equity and equality has been successfully established in the iron ore mining industry, and in other sectors has been advancing rather very slowly. At one of the meetings of the Central Council of the iron ore mining companies in trade association, including the trade unions, in the 15 regions of Russia, designated one challenge, that is how to overcome gender and social inequalities and differences. Presently, the Libetinsky mining company is holding a round table on this issue. Russia is remaining a country with a high masculine distribution of gender roles. They share the lot of women as children and household, while the role of men is breadwinning. Therefore, the gender imbalance against the background of formalized equality in the rights of men and women. But all of it depends seriously on the social-cultural aspects of gender relationships and the perception by the society of women's input in the economic and political life of the country. The survey conducted has shown that women are ready and willing to participate in industrial management, and it's being considered that more women in various sectors, and including industry management, will benefit the entire society and will help full-scale women's participation in all the areas of socio-economic life and at all levels of economic activities, including mining industry. How can this issue be resolved?
Zenara, you need to wrap up. We're over time.
All this issue should be tackled from various angles to implement a set of various measures, legislative, educational, industrial, and others. I'd like to wrap up at this point. Thank you for your attention. It's interesting as usual. It's a pleasure indeed. I have a question. Please give us a very cool answer. I'm an archaeologist. I like history. I'd like to know what is the Russian Association of Researchers in Women's History? What is it? Can you give us a cool answer?
Что такое Российская ассоциация исследователей? Да.
We got it. Alan. I thought this question would have been raised last time. Because I represented both this association and I'm the executive secretary of the Russian Association of the Women's History Researchers. By the way, I have at my desk, working desk, a file that I often use when I communicate with my colleagues and students. This is our logotype, the Russian Association of Women's History Researchers. Can you see it, this logo? No, now, yes, yes. Well, we have a website. This Russian Association of Women's History Researchers is an inter-regional, not-for-profit NGO bringing together educational industrial workers dealing with women's and gender history. This association was founded by the humanitarians who were willing to have their own institution to consolidate our interests, and the leader and organizer of it was Natalia Kustarova, who has authored many publications on women's and gender history. She's the head of ethno-gender studies, of anthropology of the Russian Academy of Sciences. In 2002, a conference was held by the International Federation of Women's History in Belfast. It was the participants from Russia, including Natalia, who is the head of this Russian association. They wanted to establish such a federation, but it was to make Russia as a member of that association. That you need your own. You need first to establish your own national Russian Association of Women's History Researchers, and it took 5 years for us to found this association. And starting 2008, the pioneer conference was held in St. Petersburg, where it was decided to found this Russian association and its executive committee. That was in 2008. I believe you know that 100 years ago, in 1908, the proponents of women's equality, they also came together in St. Petersburg, where they held the first Russian conference. In the period of 1908-2008, no association bringing together women and scholars who would study the women's history had never been there. So our association called for promoting science in women's life. I would say that fundamental competence, well, as recent as 5 years ago, this subject matter was not well accepted by the scientific community. Currently, we organize national and international conferences, various workshops on women's history, and we seek to establish a network with our colleagues in various countries. We invite to our annual conferences our colleagues from various countries. Presently, the Russian women's history researchers, they are integrated in the International Federation of Women's History Research. Our website that you have seen contains a link to the collection of all our publications, and get familiarized with all those. It's quite a rich archive. Well, initially we had only 100 members. participants of conference. Now we have more than 500 attendants, and the geography is quite extensive. I would like just take some minutes in order to cover our conference. It was held at our research institute in 2015. That was the 8th conference of our association, when we marked the V-Day of the Soviet Union. That was the movement for peace without wars and conflicts. The conference was attended by about 150 participants from 13 countries, including the United States, Germany, France, and other countries, and various regions of Russia. Mrs. Alexeyevna Chernikova, who is the head of the association, did not only support the conference, but also participated proactively in the opening ceremony. Annually, when we come together at other conferences, it was recalled 2015. We organized tours to Prokhorovka, for instance. I think many. Prokhorovka, that is the Kursk battle of 2043. And our Alevtina Chernikova, who is the principal of our university, is being remembered quite warmly by all our college participants. And the second forum was held at the facilities of our university. Dear colleagues, this year we'll hold the 14th International Conference, but not in Russia, in Chisinau, that is the Republic of Moldova, September 20 to October 3. If you are willing, you may participate. Please visit our website to learn about the information about.
Thank you very much for a brilliant presentation. Of course, then the extra information as well, and of course, as Zinara mentioned, the conference taking place this year in Moldova. So I urge you all to get on the site, have a look, and take care, and to register and try to get there. Zinara, спасибо большое. Привет к нашей
Zinara. Many greetings to our favored, beloved Belgorod region. Yes, probably our next forum will be held at the facilities of our university. Sure, in Belgorod. Thank you, Zinara, once more.
Now we are moving back to Moscow, and we have our first physical, apart from myself, speaker of the day. And I am delighted because he's been waiting very, very patiently beside me. He's ready to rock and roll, and I can honestly say this is going to open some eyes and some minds as well. He is a doctor of psychology, a professor, Director General of the Etalon. It's a non-governmental organization. And of course, he's a member of the Institute of Leadership and Management of Great Britain. I'm delighted to welcome on the stage Professor Igor Zalubovsky. Igor, the team, the topic, alarming trends of the gender landscape and practical solutions. The floor is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, my presentation may provoke a shock in some of the participants. Nonetheless, as a scholar, I rely on facts and numbers, and they are as follows. First and foremost, I'd like to have a couple of words about our Etalon NGO, not just to puff my cheeks, but just to refer to the following data. The Etalon NGO is the leading company in Russia in establishing management algorithms and human evaluation using artificial intellect, AI. We have worked for more than 15 years, sometimes as a closed institution. Over the last years, we have been available also to public organizations. We are promoting the area of the so-called precedent expert systems. This is an area which was established, pioneered by Mikhail Botvinnik, the Grossmeister in chess. Well, chess was just a joke of the genius. As a matter of fact, his main trade was promoting artificial intellect. The point is that the databases contain a lot of digitalized life situations. That's why they make decisions as close as possible to human behavior. That is why they are called the so-called X-ray, managing X-ray, like a hidden weapon of a manager. The Etalon company has a lot on its website. I wouldn't like to waste time on what our participants can read in the internet. I'd like just to mention that among our long-time clients are such companies as Almaz Antey, technical missile weapons, Rosoboron Export, we have been their supplier for many years, and such public companies as Lukoil, Gazprom, various administrative, public administration agencies, institutions, also iron and steel companies, city administrations, and so on.
As a person, as a manager, expert in management, a doctor of psychology, consult top leaders of managers of leading companies of Russia in a variety of domains, and recently Kazakhstan as well. Mining of gold, uranium, and copper. And now we will go to the substance of my presentations. In our presentation, we would focus on unique feature of precedent expert system, being able to make good and reliable forecasts, where all precedent systems I mean, we human beings are. So the person masters certain knowledge is a precedent. And the operations of such systems can be compared with a person who has unlimited life experience. This is their special value. They do take decisions not in a formal logical way, but in a way very much similar to the way a person, a human being does. So a person within the human being in the paradigm of system is object. So one person or man or woman has a certain set of skills, certain set of reactions, and coming down to the hard matter of our presentation, we see two very discerning concerning trends developing in the gender environment of our country, at least. The first trend is as follows: women, in terms of key parameters relating to the occupation, more and more overcome men. The second trend, women, so more and more women are pushed away from a managerial position, from decision making. So it's very rarely that we see the bullying, but the psychological pressure, harassment is something which many women experience. I'm speaking about the middle and top level managers of women. Our company operates across the entire post-Soviet space and in certain Western countries. So, and we offer lifelong guarantee for our systems. So that means that we can monitor hundreds of organizations and enterprises of our country along many years. About 5 years ago, we noticed that women began to overcome men in a number of of key parameters related to work. I remember that at that time we discussed it with Georgy Gensen, and we were about to develop an analytical system which would study this phenomenon, but unfortunately he left us very unexpectedly 3 years ago, as a matter of fact, and we carried on with this monitoring effort, and we noticed that now with the arrival of COVID and the post-COVID situation, this trend has intensified. Judge for yourself. I will read out now the values of key 8 parameters of middle top leaders of managers of the countries. All parameters are within the standards are within the range from 0 to 100. The difference in 3 points is a serious difference. The current position of women, the current second value is the current position of women. So this is the average temperature, like parameter. In this case, this is a correct approach. So the caution 71 in men 51%. Say attentiveness in ladies 76, in men 48. These numbers have not yet been articulated anywhere and will never be articulated.
Допустим, предусмотрительность и
So,
скрупулезность – это
if
такие
the
области, где женщины
attentiveness
были
is
чуть
an area where
впереди
women
всегда.
have always been ahead
Но мы
of men,
посмотрим
but
дальше.
let us look at other parameters. The ability to show initiative, 73 in men, women 50% exactness, 56 against the ability to goal achieving, 75 against 43, twice as much. Modern women are goal-oriented. Stress ability to stand stress 80% to 49. Objectively and self-assessment 64 against 48. And 38 and 38 basically is close to inadequate self-assessment, and general ability to work 76% of women and 54 with men. I would like to add that as the COVID situation showed us, women are more successful and are more reliable and stable operating in a remote mode, and women surpass men in terms of forecasting. The situation is not likely to change, but will be gaining in strength. So let me come down to the conclusion. Women are being pushed away from decision-making process. At the end of January, a new composition of the Russian government was announced, and now it has 1 woman less than before. We have only 1 lady as a minister. Mrs. Lyubimova as Minister of Culture. In the previous cabinet, there were 4 women. Of them, 2 vice premiers and 2 ministers. Now, we can state that in the post-COVID reality, I mean the current situation, women are being fired, the first candidates to be fired, and the subconscious supremacy of male is still, male sex is still there, though it remains the strongest only in the name. Women in many parts surpass men currently, and this is a scientific fact and not a feminism. So the most talented women noticed this. Nikolai Tsiskaridze, the famous ballet dancer, says, I can tell you that women's brain is much more sophisticated than males, but it is difficult to explain to boy students what they're supposed to do than to girls. So we can measure this difference. What are the consequences of this trend in women? So women are getting trauma, they're being depressed. They understand that they're better, they can do better work as a male but it is the man who goes to the business trip and goes to the board of meetings. So women leave country to gain income abroad. Well, the effectiveness of companies is going down, but at the same time, based on the data of McKenzie, the number of women, ladies affect positively or negatively the effectiveness, productivity of companies. So companies where the women in position of managers is 50% can result in much higher profits. The Colombian Business School says that the value of companies with at least one women at the position of level is 40% million higher than with the companies where men occupy this position. What our women can do in this situation? To go to the center of prof-orientation. We have a great system of prof-orientation. Well, fairs of vacancies in form, but in substance, it can offer very little to a level of the top level. If a manual worker, she can find a work easily. But if this woman is an expert in logistics at the managerial, more often than not, her position is occupied by a man who is not desirous to vacate this place for women. So what they say, what are occupations are open to them, to women? So-called experts in construction, career building in recruiting companies. But with all due respect to them, I would like to say that as a rule, those areas where which can be recommended to women are in a very particular, coincide with the vacancies which Dutch recruiting companies have. I simply state it as a fact. So there are no special programs for women of high level which would show what they can do, what they're capable of, in which way they should move, because the person cannot move forward in all spheres, but only those for which he or she is capable. And since new technologies offer great opportunities, we in our team decided to build a project Ettalon Business for Women. So this is a project which is quite a great project. I will only give you highlights of this project. You will be able to get the presentation of this project and to read it in great detail. The project was conceived as a response to the demand of top level which women which are in a difficult position in our current realities. This project has 5 thrusts: personal, professional growth, alternative opportunities for implementation, hidden potential, and the so-called success potential, which is a very interesting trend which can be observed in foreign countries. Conceived potential in a goal achieving. The third thrust is the delegation of responsibilities, assessment of burnt out, and identification of particulars which affect personal life. What you get from this project? Specific recommendations. Any woman can subject herself to offline or online diagnostics. Then it will be processed by system intellectual at the top level, and she will get an individual mentoring, because it will not be a consulting, it will be more mentoring. This project is now greatly demanded by the women community. The technological foundation of this project are advanced systems of artificial intelligence Well, various options for participation in this project are possible, individual or group. We can have roundtable format or other formats as you wish. But I would like to share with you something more. Mrs. has become a participant of this project because I have the honor in the National School of Business of Mrs. to conduct classes for managers. Lately, during the off-class time, together with colleagues, we tested some of our methodologies with women managers, trying to understand what is more important for them. As a result of this testing of this project was done within the Mrs. Facility. So the obvious suggestion is to carry on this work with the Mrs. because Mrs. has always been at the front line of modern technology development. This project is being developed and pushed in spheres which surpass exclusively women's issues and going further to beyond the curriculum in Russia and other countries as well. And I would add that this is a project for those women who have already made their way in their life, but who would want to go further. And in conclusion, since there is a specific detailed presentation, I do not think it would be interesting for you to go deep into details, and I would not like to convert my presentation into an advertisement of this project. My presentation is about something different, about the difficult, very grave situation in which women find themselves in our non-too-friendly world. Non-friendly for them. In conclusion, I would like to invite your attention to two citations of Coco Chanel. Do not grow, do not prevent your wings to grow. And Irina Hakamada said, it is not important, it is not enough to wish, you should be prepared to fly. So now in Russia there is a project which will allow you women to be ready to fly, and we are trying to help you to make your flight powerful and successful. Thank you for your patient hearing.
Очень прикольно. Я знаю, что у нас вы будете с нами дальше. У меня просто маленький
короткий вопрос. I have a question for you.
О, да, конечно. У меня очень маленький вопрос, короткий вопрос. Хорошо. Как отличается
In which way mentoring is different from consulting?
Где разница?
Where is the difference? And according with international practice, consulting is a system of lower level. Mentoring is on the one part is participation of the person in this approach, and on the other side, the intellectual intelligence is involved, and this is all combined in the process of mentoring, and is sent or channeled to a woman as a set of recommendations. I would like to emphasize that this is a very detailed and concrete project. Thank you very much, Igor. It's great.
For, of course, the later on. And I know waiting patiently on the line, also in Yorkshire, but not in Leeds. She's in the University of York with her presentation, What It Takes to Be a Golden Department for Gender Equality. Delighted to welcome on Professor Caroline Descent. Professor Descent, you're very, very welcome to the forum today.
Hello, it's really good to be here. Yes, I'm hearing a lot of very interesting talks actually. It's been a really stimulating morning so far. So let me share my presentation. So hopefully everybody can see that. Yeah, good. So yeah, I was going to talk to you this morning about my talk, which is entitled What It Takes to Become a Golden Department for Gender Equality. And this is a little pun here, a golden department, because our department at the University of York is very well known in the UK for having gained 4 of these Athena Swan Gold Awards. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's been involved in gaining those those awards, and really just more generally about our work around gender equality. Right, I have this problem sometimes with my laptop. I have no idea why they don't move down. Isn't that interesting? Let me see. What is it doing? Oh, I do apologize. Yeah, there we go. I'm not sure, it seems to get just stuck sometimes. So I thought I'd just tell you a little bit about myself to start off with, and then something about chemistry at York, and then just talk about some of the key policies that we've had around supporting gender equality. So I've been at York for quite a long time, so back since 1997, when I came to York following my PhD, which I did in the United States at Yale University. And I was first of all a researcher, a postdoctoral researcher, and then following that I gained 2 prestigious sort of university research fellowships. They allowed me really to focus very strongly on the research side of my career. And following on from those, I then became a senior lecturer and a reader, and most recently a professor, full professor in the department. So that's sort of the typical academic structure really within the UK. And you'll see alongside, I've got a little family picture there. This was taken some time ago, so all 3 of my children are now quite a bit bigger than you can see there. I had my first child back in 2000, so he's 20 now. And so I suppose alongside my career development, I've had my 3 children, and in a way that's very much informed the work that I've done around gender equality and sort of motivated my interest in the area. So what I'm going to tell you about today really is just about my own department, which is the chemistry department at York. And so we have a nice chemical picture here. And I think the thing to say is to first of all give you some background about where the situation is with respect to gender equality in chemistry as a discipline, as an academic discipline. And the picture that you're looking at here, perhaps if I turn a pointer on, that might be helpful, is might be familiar to some of you. This is this type of very traditional scissors plot. And what it shows you is how the percentage of women to men changes across the academic career structure. So for chemistry, we start off not very far from 50-50. The women are somewhat underrepresented in the undergraduate chemistry discipline. But as we move up through the master's level, it becomes quite evenly balanced. But you see then that as you go to the more senior levels of PhD and then up to junior researchers, academics who are not professorial staff, and finally to professorial staff, you have this falling off in the representation of women. The 2 sets of plots you're looking at
Sorry about that, folks. We just had a little bit of a pause in transmission. We're going to be back in just one moment. A couple of questions that we had in so far we're back.
That's good, yeah. I can't see your faces, of course, is the problem. I've minimized you so I can see my slides.
Well, it's good. You don't need to see my face at all, so it's even better if you don't.
No, I'm just trying to tell how I'll tell if it happens again. We'll see how we go. Yeah, let's just see. Okay, so it's very nice to be talking to you today, and I did start off by saying that I did some really interesting talks today. It's been fascinating actually to take part. So my contribution today will be to tell you about what it takes to become a golden department for gender equality. And this is a little joke in some ways because I use this phrase because our department is very well known within the UK as having won 4 awards under this Athena Swan scheme, which is really aimed at promoting gender equality in the academic field. It used to be particularly about STEM, but now it is across the arts and humanities as well. So yes, I'm going to tell you a bit about how our department has won these awards and the sorts of policies that we've been promoting to achieve that. So my talk today will be to start off telling you a little bit about myself, a little bit about my department at York, and then to tell you some more about the specific sorts of policies and practice that we've used at York to really advance gender equality. So I think it's quite nice just to start off to talk a little bit about myself, and I wanted to share a little bit about my professional and personal career timelines. So I've been in York for actually a very long time, longer than I like to think, in fact now, so since 1997. And I came to York following a PhD in the United States. I was at Yale University in the States, in fact, to do my PhD. So I came as a junior researcher, but then subsequently moved into independent research fellowships, and then subsequently after those into the kind of more typical academic roles of senior lecturer, reader, and professor. So these 2 roles are probably equivalent to assistant professor and associate professor, I suppose. So alongside my kind of professional career, I've also had 3 children. So you can see a picture of them here, and they're all now much bigger than they are in this picture. I think it's nice, nice for now that they're growing into adults to maintain their sort of anonymity a little bit. So I prefer to show this picture of them from a few years ago. But you'll see that I had these 3 children sort of spread out in time and really interspersed with my career as it developed. And very much, I suppose, my personal experience of that has informed the work that I've done personally around gender equality. So what I'm going to tell you about today is really all about chemistry at York, so the chemistry department in my university. And you have a picture here of a very typical chemist. It is a female chemist, which you might not always be. If you Google chemist, you're still much more likely to come up with pictures of male chemists. So I need to give you a little bit of background, I think, before I talk in detail about my own department. And the sort of plot that you're looking at here might be familiar to some of you working in gender equality. It's what's called a scissors plot. And so it really maps out how the percentage of females that are retained or lost as you move up through the different grades of the academic career. So here we're starting off at undergraduate on the left-hand side, moving up to professor, and you can see how we're falling here from 40% down to around 9%, in fact, at the professorial level. And this is the average across all UK universities for chemistry departments. So this is a very worrying trend that you see here. And I think always when you look at these plots, it's really important to remember that you're losing so many individuals as you kind of move down this sloping line. I mean, really, this is a great loss of talent that we're witnessing when we look at these plots. So we've wanted to work to try to restore that balance in our department and to try to really keep the PhD female students and encourage them to stay in careers in science. So this is a plot that shows you the progress that we've been making towards that. And the 2 different color oranges that you're looking at here are our results from 2008 and then moving 10 years later to 2018. And you can see that our numbers for undergraduates are fairly stable, so very much around the 40% mark in terms of the number of females in our department. That improves slightly as we go to the master's level. That's in line with the national trends, in fact. And again, we've seen a very modest increase there. We're pretty flat, our profile, as we go into PhD, which is really good because many departments are already losing substantial numbers of female students to PhD. But really, the results that we're probably most proud of are the ones in this middle part of the career here. So for junior researchers and then into our lecturers, which would be our assistant professors, I suppose, that you might be familiar with. And you can see really some really good progress that we've made here. So we've moved from around 30% researchers in 2008 up to 40% researchers recently. And in fact, for our assistant professors, we have 50% now of those are females. We're still seeing a fall off towards the more senior rankings, but we are making progress there as well. And in fact, this plot, of course, is a little out of date because it's from 2018. So if I take the most recent current data from 2020, our professors were then, female professors are now up to 25%. So some really nice progress there at sort of retaining the females in the department and also promoting them. So it's nice to see some faces, I think, behind the numbers. So I like to show some pictures of some of the successful women in our department. So up at the top here, we have Professor Lucy Carpenter, who's a very eminent atmospheric scientist. And Lucy's already been elected as a fellow of the Royal Society, which is really the primary honour for scientists in the UK. And alongside her here, you can see Professor Dame Pratibha Ghai, who is another fellow of the Royal Society that we have in our department. She's a nanoscientist, a surface scientist. So it's wonderful to have these really eminent role models. And also in the younger staff in the department, Professor Kirsty Penkman, who's in the middle of this picture here, was one of the Blavatnik chemistry laureates for 2020. So this is an amazing honour. And Alison Parkin, also one of our younger members of staff, who's also been really successful recently at winning prizes. So I think it's nice to show that we're not just recruiting females, but we have these really successful females as well. And something that we've been very careful about in all of the work we've done around gender equality is to try to develop policies that benefit everybody in the department. So we very much don't just tailor policies towards the women. We try to develop policies that are transparent and can help all of the members of staff across the department. And, you know, this is really important, of course, for some of the men in the department. People have different things that can affect their career pathways and perhaps their confidence to access networks as well. So I think it's been really important to keep the whole of the department engaged with the process, that we really make them policies for everyone. So probably the most important policies are around family-friendly working. So going back some time ago, we introduced a lot of policies around part-time working, job shares, annualized hours, flexi time. So really encouraging people to use flexible working if that was what worked best around their family commitments. And we were able to introduce a part-time working assurance. This is in this bullet point here. And what that means is that for staff members who decided to start to work part-time, they would be guaranteed that they could return to their full-time hours examples of this across the department. And this plot is showing the percentage of staff who work part-time. So the red bars are the women, the females who work part-time, and the blue bars are the males who work part-time. And I think it's really great to see, you know, you expect perhaps to see more women working part-time and overtime, but really encouraging to see more of our male staff working part-time. And that's, again, these are figures from 2017, but those figures have increased again recently. And we do even have full male professorial staff who work part-time to share caring responsibilities as well. And I think that's been something that's been really good to see, because what the men, I think, have seen is that the women are able to work successfully in this way. And they really value as well the opportunity to improve their work-life balance through you know, taking on this flexible and part-time working. So for promotion, it's another really important area that you have to focus on within a department. We've been very careful to try to emphasize always that we need to look at quality rather than quantity of outputs. So that's a key thing. And we also, in our department, do have a workload model, and we found that this is something, so it's to really assess how much work is assigned to the individuals in the department. We found when we first started looking at this that people who work part-time were often overloaded, and clearly this is a really difficult thing if this is happening, because really those part-time workers then are having a double jeopardy, if you like, from that. So having a workload model makes workload allocation very transparent, and this really is to the benefit of part-time workers. And we have some other more directed policies as well to really support people in the periods right before they apply for promotion. We would say that you can do as much in the department, but you still need to work with your university, and really, really important to monitor the applications for promotion once they go out to the department and into the university system. But we've had great success with this, and the policies we've developed have really been successful for the women. We have the same rate of promotion, so 14% is the rate for the whole of the staff body within any 1 year. So men and women are being promoted at exactly the same rate in our department. And yeah, so here 66% of the female staff who were promoted were working both part-time and flexibly at the time that they were promoted. So good evidence that that's really possible, and sort of a very viable career strategy. We also need to look after the other types of staff categories in our department, and one of the really important ones are our junior researchers in the department, and we have a great deal of support for those individuals. We like to give them lots of opportunities where they can gain experience of things such as writing grants, teaching summer students, and supervising research projects that will give them good material to put onto their CVs as they look for new jobs. And in fact, we also have a particular researcher champion who organises events for these individuals and is there to advise them on writing fellowship applications. And the work we do, it's also extended right through our PhD students down into our undergraduate students. So we do, in fact, train our undergraduates in equality and diversity. They take this as part of their core teaching curriculum that they get in our department. And the same is also true for our PhD students. It's a required course that they take, a course of equality and diversity training. We do lots of work in our department to talk to all of the members of the department about the importance of gender equality and other types of equality and diversity. That's partly through newsletters, partly through having lunchtime chat sessions, normally organising seminars, different things like this. Really important to keep talking to everybody to try to change the culture. And I think we're also very conscious that, in working in this area, we mustn't just think about gender, we must think about other types of characteristics that are underrepresented in science. So for us, we do think about disability very much, also about lesbian, gay, bisexual and trans individuals, and about Black and minority ethnic individuals too. So all of these characteristics are taken account of in the work that we do. So my message would just be to, if you're interested in supporting the environment you work in, really to kind of put equality at the heart of everything you're doing, to always be thinking about it and be mindful of it. For us, that's it goes on to the agenda in all our committees. We think about social activities that fit with families. We do lots of outreach and lots of openness really about whatever goes on in our department. What do you need to be successful? I would say some of the ingredients for success are shown here. You really need big commitment across the department, but the key thing is the senior management must be committed to this and engaged with this. And this is our current head of department, Professor Duncan Bruce. He's a great male ally. We were talking about allies earlier on, really supportive and active in driving forward gender equality in the department. And we've been very fortunate at York to have two previous heads of department, both males again, but who've been really supportive of gender equality. And this, I think, has made the big difference for us. I would say communication is really important. You need to tell people what you're doing and why you're doing it. And my other tip would be to really think about developing policies that can benefit the men and the women in the department, that only good will come of that. This does, though, take money, and it does take personnel. It takes quite a lot of work, really, for the people doing this work. So that must be said and must be acknowledged. And I think that's all I've got to say. Apart from, I just want to thank very much two of my key colleagues. This is Dr. Leonie Jones here, and this is Dr. Helen Coombs. And they've worked over many years as well to really support gender equality. So I wanted to acknowledge them at the end. So thank you for your attention.
Caroline, thank you very, very much for an absolutely brilliant. I'm sorry we had sort of little glitches in the presentation, but it was absolutely wonderful. We do reckon we're kind of having a discussion here, not a conspiracy. It's a pretty good theory that it was University of Leeds that were messing up your presentation. So it got kind of like
it actually froze at the beginning. You probably didn't even see that then, because I think you probably lost me at that point. But yeah, so it wasn't such a bad thing that I had to start again. So,
no,
yeah.
It's absolutely terrific, in depth, and a lot that we can learn from as well. So thank you so much. Have a brilliant Friday and a great weekend.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Caroline. Okay, and we're staying over in the UK, but we're going to go north, a bit further north from Yorkshire. We're going up to Scotland. And no, I don't have the theme of the presentation, but I know she will tell us herself. We're delighted to welcome onto the forum Dr. Monique Mckenzie from the University of St Andrews. Monique, can you hear me?
I can. Thank you very much for having me along today. I've been waiting patiently.
I know. We're sorry. We're sorry we're delayed. We had glitches, but as you say, we've saved the best speaker to last. So the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'll just share my screen. Wonderful. Can you hear me okay before I continue?
Loud and clear. Loud and clear.
Wonderful. So I'm going to talk to you today about promoting meaningful participation of men and women across generations in decision-making within educational management. So my name is Monique Mckenzie. I am an assistant vice principal or provost here at the University of St Andrews, and that's up in Scotland. And that just means that I look after all postgraduates here at St Andrews. That's all of our master's students and all of our PhDs, all considered collectively. Oops. I want to start actually by saying I'm not an expert in gender equality or diversity. I'm actually a statistician, and I work mostly on environmental impact assessment projects and more recently wildlife crime projects. So I guess this is really coming from my personal experience and my personal views based inside senior leadership at the University of St Andrews. So I want to give you a little bit of context about my progression, if you like, through the organisation. Before I continue with the actual topic. So as I mentioned, I'm currently the assistant vice principal, which means I look after about 2,000 postgraduates here at St Andrews, which is about 20% of our student base. And that leaves me responsible for the postgraduate curriculum and the student experience here at St Andrews for our postgraduates. I guess some people would see me also as the graduate dean. So I look at difficult cases and I try and find solutions to very sometimes sticky problems for our students. And I'm also responsible for funding agreements and partnerships. I set up internal and external scholarship schemes. I think I roughly manage about £5 million of scholarships each year, but our organisation puts about £15 million a year into scholarships each year. And I guess my career progression is quite unusual. So while I'm currently in the principal's office, before that, I was the deputy director and the director of the graduate school for interdisciplinary studies. So I looked after taught programs which were interdisciplinary in nature. Before that, I was the director of teaching in mathematics and statistics. I guess I was recruited quite a long time ago now as a lecturer in mathematics and statistics from, I was actually based in the University of Auckland in New Zealand, but now of course I'm here at the University of St Andrews. So I'm really going to talk about what types of institutional arrangements promote meaningful participation of men and women from different generational groups in decisions related to educational management. So along the way, I'll be talking about some concrete measures I hope are useful to try and back gender equality in STEM, and the things that each one of us can do to support gender equality in our organisations. I really have to agree with what Caroline has just said. We really must mainstream equality in educational decision making. It has to be at the heart. It's got to be about weaving equality into the fabric of the institution. And that means taking concrete measures, sometimes they cost money, which individuals and organisations can take to try and champion gender equality in our institutions. So I want to start by setting the scene. I think this is very important to define the starting position before I continue along this line of thinking. I'm going to cover aspects related to recruitment, some of which have been mentioned here. How do we enable people, men and women, in our organisations to participate in decision making? How do we provide the right sort of opportunities for people to take part in this decision making? And how do we set up a reward structure, not just salary rewards, but career progression, other things which matter to people in our organisation? I think what's also important is that somebody is the voice of equality in the institutions. There's some accountability, and where there are issues to follow up, someone's in charge of leading that way to try and champion gender equality in our organisation. So I want to start by saying that we here today and those who are listening, we are not moral guardians of gender equality. I really think we must start from the position that we're not some sort of enlightened group who are trying to enlighten others, and we're simply looking for engagement with senior leadership. But I think we must start from the position that we all share that same commitment to gender equality, and we're simply looking to enable others to improve gender equality in their organisations. I think if we do that, it'll help us identify those structural barriers that Fiona also talked about to adherence of gender equality, and to look at all parts of institutional practice through that prism of equality, and really by embedding gender equality into our decision making. I think it has to start with recruitment. I think we need to make our organisations communities that everybody wants to join. Let's face it, STEM professionals have choices. They don't have to belong to an academic community. They can go off and work in the third sector, into business or whatever. So I guess we have to ask ourselves, why would they choose us to join us? I think we must require mixed gender shortlists so that both men and women have an opportunity to join your organisation. I think we need to have mixed gender interview panels so that whoever is thinking about joining your organisation can see that there are senior people represented at that level. I think we have to, this has also been mentioned before, contextualise applicant achievements given any career breaks. It's not just the time that you take away from your job, it's the things that happen afterwards. You don't simply bolt back into a fully flowing research strategy. And I think we have to listen. I think we have to undertake exit interviews for people that do leave us to try and figure out what the barriers might be and how we might be able to solve those for our staff. And then I think we need to enable those that we have recruited. We have to work very carefully to recognise those invisible workloads. I think it's fair to say that women, rather than men, have spent a lot more time advising students, providing wellbeing support, thinking more closely about diversity and inclusion, program coordination and supporting roles. So how do we recognise that and put that inside those workload models so it's not on top of your research and your teaching responsibilities. I think if we're careful, I think then we can identify and remove those progression obstacles which we see in our career paths. I think we have to provide short-term leadership opportunities, so for people to try this out, people to participate in decision-making at the senior levels, things like working groups, quite low stakes secondments, so you can go and do a job for a while and then simply return to where you came from. So it's a credible return route and there's no stigma attached to shifting back into that place that you came from. And I think feedback's very important from women and men about how they're performing in their current avenue, but also alternatives they might wish to try next. I think enabling is not just though for the individual, it's about enabling as a network and as part of an organisation. And that starts by making sure that we have role models in laboratories, lectures, seminars and boardrooms. It means that we have role models involved in decision making at all levels. And while role models are quite informal mentors, I think we need to have structured mentoring programs like we've heard about before. And that's across all phases of management, early to mid-career, mid-career to senior career, and also as part of senior leadership. And that means recruiting to mentoring schemes, having the right people in the room, running events and taking feedback. And I think we have to have diverse career pathway opportunities. I guess much like mine, I've had a very different type of career pathway, but there are many others that you can take in these organisations with various entry and exit points so that many different sorts of people can slot into a variety of career pathways. I think as part of this, we must provide genuine opportunities for people to participate. If we want people to participate in decision-making in senior leadership, then there needs to be lots of ways for this to occur. It can be very simple, like focus groups, consultations, maybe they're working groups, short-term, long-term, and they can be within and across schools or departments. And it's funny, I'm still hearing from people that they need to know about it. We need to advertise the multiple ways that people can input and participate in decision-making in education organisations. So that's simple things like web pages, forums, clear announcements about what it would be like to kind of contribute to these sorts of groups. So is it a few hours a week, a few hours a month? What's the expectation if somebody was to try and join and contribute as part of this decision making? And we really must listen. And I think that means publicly, privately, we need open fora, live events with question and answer sessions so that everybody can see it's a transparent way to communicate with the community and to unearth any upcoming issues. I mean, rewards, I think, must feature in this, and I don't just mean salary rewards. I mean that you fund the gaps for secondments. So if you shift into a leadership role, then they fill that gap with someone who can take those activities on, so you're not returning to a big pile of things which haven't been done in your absence. I think they should be recognised as part of career pathways to make sure those short-term leadership opportunities are recognised as part of your career development. And it's mentioned here before, actually, about the gender pay gap. I think it's quite common that women tend to underestimate what their salary needs to be. So there needs to be well-defined role-based salary scales so that people think about what their activities are and see how they slot inside those salary scales. And I do think the gender gap, which I think we all see in universities, is toxic. And I think what every university can do to try and dismantle that gender pay gap, I think, is very important. I think accountability is also incredibly important. This has also been raised by another speaker. I mean, someone should be responsible at the very senior levels for being the voice of equality and inclusion, so representing equality in decision-making and more broadly in our institutions. And when things do go a bit wrong or things are spotted that need to be sorted, that they lead the charge really to try and address those inequalities, not by themselves, but as part of a team that they lead. And I think we need to be answerable to others about the lack of gender equality where it exists, and that includes with students. I think it needs to be regular and it needs to be public about the lack of equality where we find it in STEM and inside our organisations. So I want to finish really by saying that it's iterative. I think I've focused on the how. I've tried to talk about weaving equality into the fabric of our institution. I think I've outlined some concrete measures which individuals and organisations can take, and I think it's really important that we think about setting that scene and making sure that it's a collective responsibility about gender equality. I think we need to consider carefully how we recruit people. How do we enable those potential decision makers to participate, men and women across generations, inside our organization. We need to provide the right sort of opportunities, the right number of opportunities that lots of different groups can actually join and participate in. And we need to recognize those efforts and that time and that commitment with rewards financially, but also rewards in terms of career progression. And I think our accountability is absolutely crucial at the most senior levels, and a way to track improvement so that we can go back around and say, right, let's circle back. Now we know what we know. What are we learning? How can we adjust our recruitment, our enabling, our opportunities, and our rewards? So that's the end of my talk, and I'm very happy to take questions.
Monique, thank you very, very much for, well, first of all, for your patience in waiting for us. It's not that often that a New Zealand professional is patient with an Irish person, but thank you very, very much. I've one very short question on that related to, because it was brought up already by Caroline, and we've had it mentioned earlier on as well. I think it was, yeah, Fiona mentioned it. How careful, or no, let's put it this way. We talked about men should be allies. To what limit should we be allies? Because we did see that kind of like pushing too hard to say, oh, well, you're just back from maternity leave. Maybe you need a bit of time off and so on and so forth. Should there be a dialogue between men and women? Should women be more forthright in saying what is good for them, comfort for them? Or how do men understand?
No, I have to agree with Caroline. I just think men and women have to continually always be part of that conversation. So I think the conversation should never take place in isolation, because I think everybody needs to understand holistically what those issues are and the extent and magnitude and the complexity really of those issues. And that can only happen by dialogue. So I think it just has to happen as a collective, and we have a collective responsibility to further gender equality at all levels of the organisation. So as soon as I think men are excluded from these conversations, then they're unaware of the complexity and the magnitude of the problem where they exist. So it's really just making sure everyone stays part of that conversation and they learn how to speak respectfully and to work together in partnership.
That's great. Listen, Monique, thank you very, very much. I'm very jealous you're up there in the Highlands of Scotland, so have a lovely Friday.
Very sunny.
Exactly, you've got great weather at the moment, so have a lovely day and a great weekend. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Okay, and now we're moving to the, let's just say, an end to our forum, but an absolutely fantastic panel ending. We're going to bat around some questions that have been brought up already today. I've got some tasty ones here, and of course my colleagues will, I'm sure they have a lot more to say than I do, a lot more intelligent things to say than I do, of course. And I'm going to introduce them from the far end across then to me. So introducing in the head of Rosagro's meat business unit, Yevgeny Sluchevsky. Yevgeny, very welcome. So guys, you can grab your microphones because we'll switch them on as we go along. Sitting next to him from, well, more commonly known as PhysTech, is also known as MIPT. He is the head of the Laboratory of High Energy Physics. He's a professor, of course, and a corresponding member of the Russian Academy of Sciences and a Doctor of Sciences in Physics, Tagir Aushev. Very well, welcome. And sitting next to him, because of course there is no party on this panel. We're all the same. We're all, well, they're all clever academic people, but we'll leave it there. Welcoming on the Vice Rector for Science from the Moscow State Linguistics University, a Doctor of Sciences in Philology, Professor Olga Irizhanova. Very welcome. And already one of our friends who's been already so far with us today and had an absolutely, well, he did say he was going to shock us with statistics. I'm still kind of trying to mull them over in my head. And again, he woke us all up to the situation. So Professor Igor Zalyubovsky, you're very welcome back. Okay. First, Yevgeny, I'm going to give you the first question. It came in from, I was going to say from a listener. I think I'm on radio still. So it came in from one of the people who was watching, and the question is this, because you're working in like the agro business, shall we say, and what she wants to know is, this is from Karelia. It is Ludmila Vladimirovna Morozova, and her question is that, say for ecological education, What do you think in terms of like try to like create a safer environment, like clean food and so on and so forth? How important is the role of women in that? And it's kind of a burning question because women, they see they take more care of the environment. Is that true? And could there be a balance, say, in your business?
Могу уточнить вопрос?
Okay.
Could you please specify?
Na ramka celkom w ekologia I po sustainable development.
Yes, environment and sustainable development.
Jest generalnie равенство на этом или есть дисбаланс?
There are a lot of women there, or is some imbalance?
Если говорить в целом про
Well, if you take it as a whole, I mean agriculture, the imbalance is there indeed, and it's quite sizable. If you take, for instance, our company, then the balance of gender balance is 70 to 30 in the industry and business. We have only 30% of women. How does this balance changes over the services or departments of the company? This balance persists across the board. I wouldn't say there is some particular difference in the functionality of environment, sustainable development in that aspect. I think it's a uniform picture in all the functionality.
How can we change that?
The key issue here is what do we need it for, after all? If we consider it as a goal to ensure gender balance, gender equality, and to enhance competitiveness, then there is a whole set. We can identify a whole set of arrangements or mechanisms that would be similar for any sector or industry, which would help us facilitate women to go more proactively and take high positions in hard labor industries. The first thing that limits women's coming to our industry, that is hard labor. If we take, for instance, management positions, there is no hard physical labor. Anyway, a career to this position still goes through intensive labor, hard labor. We should start probably not from the company itself, because we are keen on having competitiveness at the entry. And clearly, when we increase the number of women, girls who are willing to come to our company, we increase competition at the entry, and we get higher qualified personnel. Also, we should start from the universities for more women to be enrolled to the respective sector-related universities to build their career there.
It makes perfect sense. I'm going to move across to the lady on our panel. And a question came in from Alsu Zabirova from the State Oil Technical University in Ufa. And her question is that, and this relates to within a technical vuz, a technical university, following on from what Yevgeny just mentioned, that in terms of learning and speaking English language, is there any perspective for that? Because, of course, you're from the Moscow State Linguistic University, so it's kind of you're coming from that base. But in a technical university, how important is a second language or a third language or even fourth?
Yes, thank you for your question, and I think that this is it's really important. And if we talk about technical universities in particular, I believe that probably for them, studying foreign languages, English of course, and other languages as well, is as important as it is for linguists or philologists on a broader scale. Because, as you know, the way I see it, we can't build any relations and we can't build any scientific or research work without reaching out to communities outside the country. So I believe that to share the community, to share your views and ideas, it is really important to know other languages, because as we know, language is a vehicle. So we can't travel, we can't move without a vehicle. And it should be quite upscale and quite up to date. So I believe that even for technical people, foreign language is important. And besides, as far as I know, researchers who are very much into technical languages, they are really, really interested in studying these languages in terms of research. Thank you.
No, I'm following off from that because I'm not going to let you wait too soon. Following off from that question is that we see here, for example, of course, our colleague Elena Bozano with the Academic Writing Centre, the emphasis that many researchers and scientists see, and even students as well see, is on, for example, writing academic articles or reading academic articles and academic text. But as they're doing here, they're also saying you also need to present, because as Evgeny did, he can present in English. You need that to be able to present. How important are presenting skills, for example, in a foreign language or even in Russian alone?
Oh yes, I think that this is a very important question, and thank you for bringing it up in this audience. And yes, I know that there are lots of people that really, they know their subject better than many other people, but they really lack those presentation skills. And now with the whole situation, when we face the necessity to publish or perish, as we know, it's really important to know how to write a paper in this decent way and how to present your ideas in such a way that people from various fields and various backgrounds would understand you, not necessarily only the specialists that you talk to. So I believe that knowing a language, I mean your own language, is very important for conveying your ideas, for getting them across to the audience on many, many levels, starting with people who are really experts to, let's say, lay people.
Okay, lay people like myself, because when I hear all the academic speaking, it's kind of like not white noise, but it's difficult to kind of grasp. But I always say to people, speak to me like you're speaking to a 3-year-old. And just like make it as simple as possible. And it does work. It does work.
Yeah, I usually say, speak to me the way you talk to a journalist, tabloid journalist. Because this is one of the way. No, I mean, when you want to explain your idea, it's just as if you were talking to some tabloid journalist, and as if you were selling your ideas. So it is really important to go down a bit in your style.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. We call, like, as you know, the elevator pitch. You got 10 to 30 seconds before people switch off.
Yeah.
You said that, so perfect.
And if I may, there is another point about this, is that I think that when you start talking and when you start writing in a different language, the logic changes in a way.
That's true. Mm-hmm. You agree? You agree? Microphone. We согласны, что когда вы начинаете общаться на другой язык, сразу
that when you start to communicate in another language or write an article, the logic changes. Yeah, is it right? Well, I do not agree 100%. I think there are some deeper things that do not change contingent on the level or the subject matter, the level of the talk. If you take Russia, year on year, you can hear from all podiums say that we are moving to gender equality and to equity with women, but it's not an established fact. And I have brought up some numbers, what the actual picture is. So I think many things are determined by some internal directions. And these internal intentions do not allow to promote women to some high positions. What words can we think up not to promote a woman? Maybe she would like to go to maternity leave, or she is too young, or she is too old. It's not the point. Because previously that direction, this mindset is in male's mind. And there is another obstacle. If a top manager has moved forward a woman, then he will be unable, to stop her on the way. It's better, to cut her wings at the outset. So I also described today some other aspects that put it into a set of clear-cut numbers. And then it's much harder to demote a woman, not promote, if her performance parameters are way, way higher than the head of the department. And there are many such cases. However strange it might seem, myself, the person who gives advice to top managers, to executives of some leading companies, not only in Russia, I would say that after the COVID pandemic, which is not yet over, now when males have got far forward, some panic has emerged. No, it's rather vice versa. Women are now giving in strides while men are sort of lagging behind. No, you cannot choke all of it. Suffocate all of it. Of course, we always say formally that everybody has a way forward, including women, but this dualism of male's mind that currently in many areas, many sectors, women are way, way higher than men in performance, and this gap is persisting while the male's parameters are not declining. It is the women who move forward faster. It's hard to understand globally, but the current status, of course, is unbearable. And the project I mentioned, it's just a minor input, not in the solution of this issue, but rather some input at least. Because men should. It's rather hard for me, even for me, to say that. But trying to be unbiased and trying to speak as a scholar, I would say that men should accept and perceive this situation, although it's harder, even impossible for some men.
Yeah, it is. It's a whole new world. You say, like, it's a new normality, and it's good. You know, we've had it. No, I won't talk down men and say men have had it good for a long time, so we deserve a kick. No, we won't do. Now, moving to physics, and I mean, we were looking at the Nobel prizes and so on, Tagir. How important is it for, two things. One, is there an issue within physics that there's this kind of, it's a closed shop for women, or is it that maybe women are, they want to do other more exciting forms of science?
Well, first of all, I agree that there is a gender disbalance in not only in physics but in science in general. But let's see. That's everybody talking about this balance in the world, not only in Russia but everywhere. In big collaborations like at CERN, at other collaborations where I'm working. There are special groups and committees dedicated to remove this disbalance, to motivate women to go to science, to the leading positions, and etc. But let me move from the topic removing this discrepancy, this disbalance. Just first of all, look forward. Where the situation is going to, and the second, what is the reason for this? So first of all, where it's going. Now, as colleagues already told, this discrepancy is everywhere, but science is actually a little bit special place, I think, because independently on whatever, science was always the united place. I mean, we have equal possibilities for everybody, all diversities, and absolutely international, and etc. And when in the current situation, many people are trying to remove this disbalance, what they're trying to do to make the equal or almost equal representatives of the women in the science. But and actually, for example, the head of the labs, head of the experiments, and etc., they have some pressure that, for example, they have dominated, their groups are dominated by the men's over the women's. So what they're doing under this pressure, they are trying to, not in the equal even, but I mean, they favor women's against men's to reduce this disbalance. But for me, this actually is removing the symptoms. What I mean, the reason for this discrepancy is much behind. It is in the education, in the growing girls and boys. And that happened that in our society, everybody says, oh, you boy, you go to the science, to the techniques, and etc. And he was educated in this way, while talents are equally everywhere. And there is no, I mean, it's like brilliant, right? So you cannot waste half of the mind and look for the brilliance only in the second half. It's that way you will not get the best result. So it means that each talent has to have the chance to get on top. I mean, to go in science, if we were talking about the talents in science. So I think that this is the place where we should work on in the education starting from the kindergarten or from the school and etc. But if we're looking forward where it goes, actually, this situation, I'm afraid that if we'll stuck on trying to remove the symptoms, I mean, just on the latest stage of this problem, trying to remove this discrepancy, this balance, preferring women, although they are, for example, less qualified than the men, just to hide, to vanish this disbalance. I'm afraid that we'll end up with two sciences, like we have in sport for men, sport for women. So it is impossible to let situation go to this stage. So we should work on the early stage rather than to try to hide the problem.
I like the idea of hiding the problem, because again, it's something that we all know. You go to buy a toy for a boy, it's going to be a truck or a car, or it's going to be soldiers, it's going to be some, set. A girl is going to be a doll, a teddy bear or something like that. So it's ingrained in our system from the word go. I'm going to just straight away ask, because, realistically, all good, like, I mean, we're talking about, as we're discussing, it's the symptoms. It's the symptoms that we're trying to treat by having positive discrimination. How can we remedy that? Because in many of the fields, not just in sciences, there is a disbalance. For example, if we're talking about social work, there's more women than men, and it's almost a closed shop. If a man wants to go in to be a social worker, it's kind of frowned upon. So how do we rectify that? Do we go right back to kindergarten? It's for you, Olga, because Tagir framed it perfectly for you, and then Yevgeny's coming in next, so be ready.
Yes, thank you, Tahir. I really agree with Tagir, because I think that there is no use looking for diamonds even in your better half, and think that you would find much more there in the women's part than in the men's part, because I believe that people should be equal, even in science, but again, you are right saying that we should actually look look deeper and go deeper, thinking about the causes. And one of the causes is actually social cognitive structures, like some people say. What I mean is actually, in simpler words, are stereotypes. Because we're governed by stereotypes, and they are actually, we start actually being confronted with them from our childhood. And you were quite right when you said that it's about toys, and that starting from the toys. And by the way, I think that this afternoon I actually came across a website that advertised STEAM sciences and STEAM education. And we know that there is a difference between STEM and STEAM, with this A creeping into this, because A stands for philology, humanities, and some kind of creative things and things like that. So it seems to be quite a nice way of combine the things together and actually tell our children that they could work together. And when I came across this website, I was quite surprised to find such a phrase as, well, STEAM science is very good for girls because they are very neat and they will contribute a lot into that.
I mean, immediately one just goes...
So much for stereotypes.
I want to wash my ears when we hear that, because again, it's stereotypes. Evgeny, для вас сейчас это вопрос,
it's a question. If you did you ever have in your childhood a man as a say your tutor in the kindergarten? I think not. Well, let us speak about agribusiness or any other business. Is there any place where there is a gender disbalance? Can we speak about what we call positive discrimination? Does it work or not? I think in business it won't work. The reason for that as follows. I agree with what Tagir says. It won't, because we all function in a very competitive environment. And any action which will be one-sidedly deteriorating our competitiveness will not be followed by us or done by us. This is a very complicated issue, how to make positive discrimination, how to structure it within the industry per se. And I can only perceive how we can do it at the level of the regulation of the industry. But at the individual business level, I think we'll find it hard to understand, to perceive. But if we place on the management position and a competent person, that will result in loss of the business. No owner of the business, no board of directors, being guided by the best possible motives, will go this way. And nevertheless, I know many situations when non-competent persons were promoted to sufficiently high positions in companies. It does happen. There is a number of host of issues, reasons which have no relevance to the professional skills of our person. But it all depends on the goal which you want to achieve. If you want to promote positive discrimination to the detriment of business, is hardly or highly improbable way of action. But I would like to agree that we should not address symptoms, but the reasons, underlying reasons, and start with the kids, is to start with adults who educate kids. So we should rather move evenly in all generation groups. If we speak about kindergarten, we should address the teachers or whatever you call it in kindergartens, who buys toys for kids. That's.
I just want to go on to this, mention this point, and I'm not saying that girls shouldn't play with dolls and boys should play with dolls. No, I mean we all choose what we want to choose. But I remember standing watching my son play football. He was 5, and he was like, 5, and there was a little girl beside, and she saw a karate section, and she was looking, and she said to her grandmother, "Oh, you know, babushka, yeah, очень хочу заниматься karate. Это прикольно, прикольно."
Sometimes I remember the situation when a girl was asking her grandma to take her to a karate school, but the grandmother refused.
It's not just that the men are saying you can't do karate, you can't do football. It's the gender stereotypes come from everybody. So Igor, on to you, and I know you want to comment just back on that. So please go ahead. Go ahead.
believe that many issues generate from a situation when one key issue is not addressed. Gender equality does not provide for equality or similarity between men and women. A women's brain is structured differently from men's brain in terms of addressing tasks. A lot of comes through emotions. Let me cite an example from the Alokin is a female and Capablanca is a male in terms of chess world that I see in my practical training and School of Business in Mrs. and in Austria that women address and solve tasks differently than men do, and due to that sometimes they are more successful than men are. But we never take that into account, not during the education or in the retraining. So I think that equally important thing is not who will be the mentor, grandmother or grandmother, but that person should understand that this person should be what? I think at a serious level that to put on equal T-shirts does not mean that the brains of boys and girls will become equal. So many companies whom I consult understand the differences or peculiarities of men's talents and women's talents. And the more we understand that, given the entire gender equality, which will never happen, but in our strive for that, we will still have unequal and different persons, men and women. We will become more successful in addressing our business tasks. At top positions, women generate different decisions, which are different from those generated by men, because their psychology is different. The chromosomes, they have a great number of chromosomes than men do. I perhaps would want to add that if we think about conscientious efforts to diversify the team with the view to generate different opinions, it's not a positive discrimination from my point of view. Positive discrimination, my understanding is that when we, despite all the particular traits of person, to even out numbers. So this is something, but when we diversify opinions, I think that's a different pair of shoes.
Good point to make. And just moving to you on this, because you started off, you're at fault for this to sort of start the fire, as officials should be doing. How can we, because you brought up the idea, but the dimension of sport, and it's something very close to my heart. I think that it should be, equal opportunities for all. There's, we do have the discussion about that, for example, when the US women's soccer team, they were given equal pay to the men's team, but then they started earning less simply because they were more successful. And the reason was because the way that the bonuses were fixed was that they don't play as many games as the men and so on and so forth. But if we look at that, like going back then to women who want to go into the sciences, how can we prepare them from childhood to understand where they can go to? And how can we, not just as men, but as a society, actually prepare them? Because, when women get up, for example, in soccer, they get up to the top level, they aren't going to earn the same as men. But in sciences, they can earn the same as men. But how do we get them to that level that they can believe in themselves and that they can actually take that step forward? What do we need to put in place from kindergarten?
First of all, I frankly don't see the problem that the women in science cannot get to the same level as men. And I can just give you a few examples. First of all, I work in Switzerland, and I had 3 PhD students, 2 boys, 1 girl, and she was the best. I mean, best out of these 3. And we had another PhD student, and few years ago in this lab after being postdoc at CERN. She became a professor in this lab. So, I mean, around me, my wife's head of the lab is woman. I mean, I have 2 labs at MIPT and in Higher School of Education, and both of them women. So I really don't see this problem. Maybe in soccer, there is such a problem because, I mean, there is an advertisement and etc., which, so people pay less money to the women's soccer and but at science, we fortunately are independent on the advertisement. So we got money for the result.
For now.
Yeah. Yeah, let's cross the fingers. So.
But that's brilliant, because it's something that gives hope. And how then, for example, we have these very successful women because they know what they're doing, they want to reach the top. Do you think we should encourage more women and girls to take up the sciences, to add something different to it?
I think yes. The obvious answer is yes. Because as I said, diamonds, I mean, we all agreed that the diamonds are actually just thrown randomly everywhere. So, and I'm pretty sure that there are many talented girls which could be successful. They just digged their talents, not digged, but oppositely, they hidden their talents and they didn't develop it just because it was, they were not given the chance to open this talent. And this is actually very sad. And I'm pretty sure that at least, I don't know, I wouldn't say that in all fields, in all industries, women has to be just the same as men. No, I'm not that far in this direction. I mean, because if it's very heavy physical work, why should we force women to go there? I mean, that's just not fair, okay? But science, I'm talking just about the science. I mean, let's not concern other fields. In science, women can be brilliant. They have talents as much as men. So, of course, the simple answer, yes, we should give them a chance. And this must be from the kindergarten, from the school, from learning math, physics, biology, everywhere. So, and just to understand that science actually, people is 2% of the world, very small. And the talented scientists even less. So, yeah, I think yes.
That's brilliant, Tiger. Thank you so much. Again, like I said, introducing to math, science, and like the whole range of subjects from the earliest age, and encouraging them to, if they like it, go forward with it. And then I'll go moving to you. And of course, in linguistics, I've read statistics here, linguistic statistics. I could be a poet, about the gender imbalance in English teachers, for example. That I think it was 65 to 70% are female and the rest are male. And I remember giving a course of lectures in Uliana State University, and in their linguistics department, learning English, there was one boy out of 60 students. And he was pretty good, but he never had a chance to blossom. And everyone said, no, because it's a man, he doesn't understand languages. So we're talking about, like, to give a balance to that. So how can we balance overall in education as well? I know we're discussing STEM, but overall in education, you brought in the STEAM. So how can we sort of, encourage boys to then look outwards as well, and sort of maybe, kind of balance it out and overall in education?
Yes, you were right actually to say that, because I was listening to my colleagues and suddenly thought that I'm a lucky person, I don't know, because we don't have these problems of somehow bringing in women into our industry, because there are lots of women and there are more women than men in linguistics. But again, that doesn't mean that we don't have this problem of disparity. So first off, this problem is actually about bringing in more males into this, and you were right to say that. And again, I don't see the problem because the way is actually to encourage them to create equal environment and to teach them languages from early age, as most people do. And if they choose to go into linguistics, okay, why not? And I think that another thing is that although the statistics says that there are more women than men in this industry, again, if we look at some managerial positions, management, the situation is reversed. So it's like pyramid, and if you go up the ladder, you will have fewer women there. So this situation is still there, actually. So disparity is everywhere, and I think that there should be some kind of governmental programs and local programs as well to encourage both men and women to enter any education and to have any education they want, they choose.
Excellent, thank you. Okay. Evgeny, I know that you might be leaving us shortly, so I want to ask,
I have another question for each of you. In what sense do we speak about this STEM, точные науки? How can you build a program at a governmental level? What should be not only Russia, but any country, what a government can do in order to pursue or promote this equality? Adopt new laws? Well, the key goal to do is to create a competitive environment and develop it. I think competition will push us up and universities to equal conditions, because those identical or equal conditions will promote ability to compete, which are necessary to win in a situation of competition. I think these are the key things. I would not believe in any stringent regulatory measures. Additional regulation may even kill or sort of masquerade or camouflage the competition. I think we need more freedom of action here. Yes, perhaps. Do you remember the times when in our food shops, grocery shops, we have other saleswomen? They were crude, and they disappeared when the market-oriented economy arrived in this country. On one side, the business will place everything in its proper place, and if an enterprise, if a company thinks that it is profitable for them to keep a lady in the top managerial position, then she will be promoted. But on the other hand, as a psychologist, I understand that centuries-long hegemony of men will not be killed in one day or even in 10 years, because those are archetypes which sit deep in the psyche of people, of men in particular. And if this issue is addressed, it will be addressed in a very slow way and not on the basis of objective, on the merits. We undervalue.
We underestimate the role of psychology when we discuss promotion in a company. There are many things people do not discuss, but which do work. As a consultant, I hear those. For instance, a beautiful woman has come and her boss will think, but my wife is ugly, and he will not move her up. But it's absurd for just a common person. but there are some conscious processes all of us have in the back of our mind. I absolutely agree with a colleague that the market will win sooner or later. And since it's better to keep women in your company, not only for this reason, gender equality will become more gender-based, I would say. But apart from business environment, there is also public service and civil service where profit is not key. And there are such historical or traditional archetypes, psychotypes, where the man is the head of everything imaginable. And unfortunately, it's hard to reverse these archetypes. Probably at the first year of studies at CIA, school, probably they study early Chekhov stories like the thin and the fat persons, men. That is a story by Chekhov. There are in-depth things in the back of our mind. The thin one and the fat one. And they have different accomplishments in life.
Let's flip it on its head. What can society do with governmental help from the bottom up?
Well, frankly speaking, it's a very complicated question, and I don't know the answer. But I can give you another example what we should not do. Let's start from this. Just one example. There is one grant established by some company, I will not name the company, for women in science. And one of my researcher in my lab, woman, I asked her to apply because I said, you are brilliant, so you will get it. You'll get this grant. Why not to apply? She rejected. She said that it is
patronizing her.
Yeah, it is. I mean, she said that I'm a scientist. I don't want to apply for grant for women in science, and she was right. So what I want to say is that what we don't have to do is to make a women league, neither in science, neither everywhere. So because given the special grants for women, it's first step to create a women league in science. So don't do this, and just create the equal opportunities. This what we must do in all levels.
This goes back to what Evgeny said as well.
Absolutely.
The market dictates, and Igor as well.
Absolutely.
Olga, I'll finish up with one very, very quick question for everyone. Oh, Evgeny has to leave, but I'll ask you three guys a quick question to end off with. Olga, the Cheltenham Horse Racing Festival is going on right now in England, and the leading jockey, the person who's basically beating men and horse, is a woman. And she's done terrifically well. She's the best shot. She's won the biggest races and so on. Is it the case of, like, as Tagir said, that, you know, just create equal opportunities? Is it a case of, as Igor and Evgeny both said, that, you know, the market will dictate? Is that what's going to happen in terms of STEM subjects, that basically it'll come to a critical mass, that basically the market will say, we need more female scientists?
Well, I think that I'm not sure which will dictate more, but I'm pretty sure that it's a person who should be the dictator in this.
That's a very difficult subject, but okay, we'll go on.
Yeah, no, I know, I'm sorry. Yes, who should dictate, actually, who should decide for themselves what to do, and actually to grab those opportunities. And it's up to the society to give them to this person. I know it sounds slightly idealistic, and going back to science, I believe that one of the ways that we can go about it is that actually we need some programs, like, for example, teaching both men and women, by the way, how to manage science, how to be managers in science, because I know that this skill we lack these skills, and it's equally important probably to channel some money into that as well. So it could be one of the remedies.
Yeah, again, that makes, it's not just here in Russia or the UK, it's around the world. I've met that myself, so brilliant. I'm going to round off, I'm going to start with, look, but the way I'll do it to be quite easy. I'm going to start with Igor. Igor, вопрос такой. Через сколько лет будет gender parity?
How many years? In how many years we'll have this gender parity as established? Never, never, because men and women are different creatures, human creatures. We are discussing it as a sort of separated, isolated from other things. But now we are witnessing a colossal physiological revolution globally. The third sex is emerging. It's not in our agenda today, but we should understand that it is in the basis of things now. When we were students at a university, we could not be shown a person who has changed his or her sex. Now I see many women who have quite objectively changed their sex. It's like an era of the demiurge, God. So the third sex is emerging like a third force. I do not think that gender equality implies uniformity. Gender equality, in my mind, offers equal rights. If a woman exceeds a man in her performance parameters, she should take over his workplace. That is gender equality. A woman is good if she does not crack a problem man-wise, and man is good otherwise. So there will never be any gender equality ever. But as for giving access to job opportunities, yes, it depends on the government to a large extent. I believe if a country has established this vocational teaching, vocational orientation system, then the system should be raised to high levels. I can give an example. My acquaintance, a lady, she is brilliant in tourism. Her firm, her company has got very good response from other countries. She goes, and everything has collapsed because of the pandemic. And she goes to the employment agency, to labor exchange, and she's being said go as a crane, construction crane operator. Well, but it would be very wrong, to lose such a professional in her field.
Just wanted, we were discussing earlier on with Alexey Payevsky about the Nobel Prize winners, and it's something you've nailed on the head. And I'm going to ask you a question: should we have Nobel Prizes for men and for women separately?
That, as I said before, the first step to make a women league is to establish the grants. So this would be the last one.
Okay. Would that be the death of science altogether?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So don't do this.
That's it. Again, it was something that we saw how there was kind of this 600. There was like 600 awards. It was 58 in science. I think it was in the entire history. So that's why I asked the question: should there be? Because we see in athletics there's men's and women's. And again, as Igor said, like that now there's transgender men who are starting to compete, can now in America compete as women. So it's a kind of that balance. So basically, to create that discrimination, it is actually a discrimination.
Yes, I think it is discrimination, and so as I said, science is a little bit different from. I mean, every discipline is different, right? The advantage of science is that women and men mainly have the, absolutely has the same possibilities in science. I mean, it's just the mind, who clever, that one is more successful. And I agree that with my colleague that the way of thinking is different, but it is different, not worse, not better. It's different. And the fact that amount of Nobel laureates within men more than within women is, in my understanding, again, it's the result, but not the reason. I mean, it's not because of the women less clever or less talented in science, but because less women are educated to go to science. If we will have the same possibility from the beginning, and if we will start giving them the same possibilities from the beginning, I'm pretty sure that in 50 years from now we'll have the same amount of Nobel laureates between men and women. So let's walk on this way, but not again. It will be curing the symptoms again. So.
It'd be cutting off the leg to save the toe. So that'd be the idea. Finally, Olga, I'm going to leave the last word to you. What advice would you give to young women who are starting to make their way in science? What advice would you give to them? Like, say, two things they need to remember as they work their way up. Yeah, just two. I would say one, but I want to make it hard for you.
I'm struggling with one.
I know. Okay, we'll do one. Let's do one. Let's do one.
Advice. Okay. Okay. I would say be brave. Don't give up. And do what you like and not what other people tell you to do. I mean, in science. That's perfect. And on that, we're going to end it off because as closing words, ideal, be brave. Be brave is so important. To Professor Tagir Aushev, thank you so much for your time today. To Olga Irizhanova, thank you so much as well, and to Igor Zalibowski, thank you so much for your time today. Folks, we are at the end of our forum today. I'd like to thank the National University of Science and Technology, MSIS, for the support and use of their facilities, to the Academic Writing Centre, the Marketing and Communications Office here, and of course our international office at MSIS, to the Cultural Department of the British Embassy here in Moscow, and of course the British Council, and to our panel members and speakers who took part today, and of course those of you who watched and partook, thank you all very, very much. And so I'll just say that my name is Al Moore, and I wish you all a very good Friday and a great weekend, and see you again very soon.